Hey everybody, how's it going? It is RambleCast time. This is March 29th. Near the end of the March. And I'm your host, Cody. And sitting here with me is Corbin.
Hello.
It's been honestly, like, it hasn't really been that exciting of a week, I don't think, unless you are just so deeply into AI chatbots. In which case, I mean, is there ever not a day that your life is extremely exciting and the world is changing at a speed you cannot possibly grasp? Meanwhile, pretty much everyone else is like, yeah, no, it's still a boring week.
Yeah, I'm glad to have a week of of quiet. I don't know. Maybe everything could be announced tomorrow. I don't know, but it's been nice.
Fortunately, Thursdays usually aren't big announcement days, so
No. Friday though.
Friday.
Gotta watch out. Gotta watch out.
Always the Fridays, man. Nothing should be big, but sometimes Fridays just come out of nowhere. So speaking of nothing happening, you have things to talk about.
Yes. Yeah. So one thing I've been working on and off for a couple weeks is now live. I've updated one of my browser extensions called Peak, and it is this extension where when you install it and you roll over a link with your mouse, it can show a little preview of what the link is. So it works for like PDF links. It'll show a little interactive preview of the PDF. Works for Office documents. Works for Google Docs links. Works with media files. All that fun stuff. I basically rewrote all of it for this because it was really old and the code was really bad. A lot of it was written several years ago when I had even less of an idea of what I'm doing. So it needed to all be redone, and it's pretty cool now, I think. And now I can update it without like other things breaking, which is really cool. So I think I can. Where's my demo? Let me see. Okay, here. I can show it. Okay, first I'm gonna put the GitHub link in the YouTube chat.
Indeed.
Which has the links to Peak on Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. It was just approved for Edge, which is cool. And where is my screen sharing? Window, Peak. There we go. So I've got Peak installed in Microsoft Edge. You can tell it's Edge because it has this giant Bing button right here.
The auto opening Bing button, even.
Indeed. And I have just a little demo page I made for myself here, and I can scroll over a little Office document, and you get a little preview here. This preview is actually coming from Google's viewer, which is handy. Works for, there's a PowerPoint, it's got that. And also what I did is you can go to the options and you can actually switch between Google's viewer and Microsoft's. So then if I refresh and I go back to that Word document, get little Word viewer here, in case you prefer that one. Let me go back to the Google Docs. Also works with like LibreOffice files here. Pretty cool stuff. Works with videos. Get a little pop-up video here. And all the videos. Works with YouTube, which is cool. Same video. Works with I just fixed works with YouTube links that are in like the share formats, like the youtube.be links, and also YouTube Shorts, because that's another URL format. Also works with audio files, and there's the PDFs, and it works with text files and all this other fun stuff. I also been working on support for other sites. So, excuse me. Got a Google Doc. I've got a Reddit post. Get a local preview here of Reddit posts. Imgur, all that fun stuff. Works with TikTok links. TikTok embed was infuriating to deal with. So yeah, so that's a cool little extension, and I'm gonna add more stuff to it, but this was already a huge update, so I'm just gonna wait a while. But yeah, it's pretty. I'm gonna eventually write a blog post about the update, but I haven't had time to do that yet. But this is much nicer, and also it works with it uses your system theme. So if I go to dark mode on my Mac and then roll over a link, it's a dark mode. Yeah. And it even where possible, it also makes the embeds dark mode. So like if I roll over a Reddit link, that's dark. So yeah, it's been fun to work on, fun to try to think of like, how could this be bad for security? How can I like someone tagged me on Mastodon. They're like, so like, how secure is this? And I was like, well, I tried to sandbox it as much as possible, but like all the media embeds, it actually just uses like the browser's own HTML5 preview. So the next time someone finds a security exploit in like H.264, which I think just happened, you might be in trouble. But you can just turn off the extension for a while until Chrome fixes that. Yeah, most of this other stuff, like the embeds, they're all in like sandboxed iframes, which isn't 100% sandbox because of how the web works, but it's like pretty good. So yeah, it's a cool little thing I made.
Very cool.
Yes. And the download links I put in the YouTube chat. Austin said, does it work with AMP? No.
Nothing does.
I mean, there's other extensions that, like, if you click on an AMP link, it'll take you to the actual page, which those are nice. And then Austin said, what happens with a password protected file? Because it depends on what the link is. If it's something that like the browser, that Peak uses the browser itself to render, like a PDF or a video file, then it'll work because you're already like your browser's grabbing it. So if you're already authenticated to see the file, you'll see it. But it will not work with stuff like Office Docs because it sends the URL of that document to Microsoft servers, and if it's password protected, it can't do anything with it. So yeah.
Yeah, not that it's a big deal, but that was Diablo's question. But yeah.
I can't read.
It's a good skill for reading. It's a good skill
Mhm.
for us in the news business. Um, let's see. Carson asked for the web store link. Go to
If
the
you
GitHub link
click
that Corbin
click the
posted his stuff
GitHub
up.
and scroll down. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a download for Chrome, download for Firefox, and download for Edge links, which you can also see right now in the background of the stream.
Yep.
Yeah, those are just
And
down from the
I
file list.
yeah, and I have a list of things that I want to add in it. I already found one bug, so it'll get updates eventually. Like I just realized today it'd probably be smart if Peak detected when you were on a metered connection and didn't try to load massive video files when you scroll over. So I'm gonna try to add that at some point. Also support for more like just general websites, because there's a lot of like especially social media websites that have really good embedded support, and I can just use that in the preview. Like before with Reddit links, I was just basically using their API and just grabbing like the title and the description because I didn't want to like do all the work for every kind of post a Reddit thing can have. But with this, it literally just takes the Reddit link and adds the bits at the end to make it into the embedded version and shows that, and it's great. It works with everything. Reddit fully supports that, so I don't have to do anything. It's great. So, yeah. Also, it'd be cool if I was looking for like 10 seconds if I could make it do previews for Mastodon posts, and I'm like, I need to build a very vague regular expression that's going to get a lot of accidental matches. So I don't know if I'll do that. But,
yeah,
maybe be cool.
Mastodon still poses a lot of challenges.
Yep.
It may be good as a social network, but man, doing anything with Mastodon from the outside is complicated.
Yeah, that might be an opt-in thing or something, because that's gonna have probably
Yeah.
some false positives. But yeah, so yeah, that's a cool thing I made. Yeah. So I guess Apple stuff now, mayhaps.
Well, there's not much else besides Apple stuff, really. But
yeah.
So, as many of you may know, there's a thing that we refer to lovingly as WWDC.
I just looked at my article and I wrote WWDC 2023 with an extra 0 in there. So it's actually WWDC. Yeah, it's WDC 20,203. So that's a ways off.
I mean, maybe Apple will still be doing them then.
That's fine. No one saw it. I just fixed it.
They'll resurrect Steve Jobs and have him giving the presentation all the way into the future. Sure.
Yeah.
And by then we might have AI smart enough to imitate him in general, and then the company will just be running itself.
Yeah. Steve Jobs will yell at Apple employees until the heat death of the universe.
Actually, long past. Everybody will have died, but Apple will continue running.
Yeah. So WWDC is confirmed for June 5th to 9th of this year. They didn't say the exact timing of the keynote. I'm guessing it's going to be at the same 1 p.m. Eastern that they always do.
Yeah.
Because they did say it's going to be on the 5th, that first keynote. So, yeah. So that's going to be real fun. That's going to be a fun week for me. Fun day or two. And obviously they didn't say what they're announcing because it's not how Apple works. It's pretty much guaranteed that they will show off new iOS version, new iPad OS, new Mac OS, maybe the watch and TV if they have something cool there.
In fairness,
Um,
they do literally name those and say spotlight the latest in those products. So in theory, purely in theory, because again, Apple, there should be stuff to announce for all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so naturally I went to Mark Gurman's recent work to find out what Apple's doing, because that's just where everyone's getting their information from at this point. And he mentions that, like, maybe at kind of the big ticket item that is supposedly coming at WWDC is that VR AR headset thing that's been in the works for forever and kept getting delayed. There was, I think there was, I want to say there was a story recently about it being shown off to executives, and it was like kind of not really impressive. I don't know if I might be thinking of something else, but
so there certainly was a story about showing it off to executives. There wasn't so much of a judgment about whether or not it was impressive. It was more that presumably, and I don't know if this was something that they discussed in their presentation or if it's just sort of a widely known fact, but the expectation is it's going to be a slow launch trajectory. Like they're expecting this to be kind of like the Apple Watch, or at least that's supposedly the direction they want it, or they expect it to take, where the initial launch is going to be, I'm just going to be kind of brutally honest here as I say this. This may not be how they would have phrased it, but the Apple Watch launched kind of like garbage. It looked dumb. Mm-hmm. It sort of failed to impress anybody because, frankly, Android Wear was already a better product. And they launched Apple Watch with a really dumb looking launcher with kind of a bad user interface and a lot of problems.
The apps were bad.
Oh god, developers had so many complaints about the apps. And
they couldn't figure out if like they could make it like actual watches, so they had like the stupid like actual gold ones that were many times more expensive than the normal Apple Watch, which of course were supported for
$1,000 watch.
Yeah, something like that. And of course they were supported for the same exact time as the cheap Apple Watch, which wasn't very long because the hardware was bad.
Yeah, for the first gen for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Apple Watch did a terrible job launching, and they're kind of expecting the headset to do about the same. I guess. I mean, I'm sure they're not expecting to have the same series of problems and missteps, but yeah, they're expecting to basically like put it into the market and make no money on it for the first couple of years. Gurman even projected that they figured that despite the fact that they're probably going to bring in or they're probably going to price it at about $3,000 per unit, due to the cost of manufacturing units, they kind of expect to basically break even. And I'm assuming a part of that is sort of like, I don't think it's going to be $3,000 worth of components, but rather, it probably probably upper hundreds for components. And I'm just saying this myself, but probably upper hundreds for components. And then in all likelihood, they will probably have to replace quite a few of them because parts are likely to break. There's probably going to be a decent amount of like returns, which generally cost money. There's going to be a lot of I'm sure they're going to be sending a lot of these units out for like press and reviewers, and they're going to have a lot of these in stores that people are going to go try and probably come away saying, they're nice, but not worth it. Like, they're going to be spending a lot of money to make this product visible, and they're going to spend a lot of money kind of covering expenses for the product. And so they're probably not really going to make back much more than breaking even, or may even lose money. But their goal, presumably, is just stick it out for a few years and eventually get out lower cost models that cost way less to manufacture, and in turn eventually make it, you know, an Apple-y product. Which is to say, still a high price, but low enough that people will find a way to make it accessible.
Yeah, and yeah, supposedly there's going to be like a cheaper version of this next year, and like I'm like mildly interested in this. It depends on what it ends up being for, because like there's been a couple different approaches to this sort of thing, and they're all like very narrow or or aren't targeted towards normal people at all. Like I still want like something like Google Glass, but it never came out, and everyone else has tried it and done a worse job. So I'm kind of just resorted to, okay, whatever. We just have smartwatches now. That's our version of this. There was the Microsoft HoloLens, which looked really cool, and then was only ever sold to like the military. That's the only people who bought it. And like I remember being like really psyched when that was announced, and they did the demo on stage where they had like a Minecraft world that they overlaid onto a real world table and was like looking around and seeing the world. That was really cool. None of that ever happened, of course. So, you know, the report was mentioning how this can be like a standalone device or an external display for a Mac, with a couple different input methods. So I don't know. Yeah, I obviously I don't think we know enough about like the actual use cases. We just kind of know the broad strokes of what it's being built to do. So I don't know, like, is this going to be like HoloLens, where it uses apps that were built for a different form factor, but kind of puts them like just in front of you, and you get like a big screen? Like there are VR apps to do that too. Or is it going to be more like purpose built? Because that's kind of Apple's thing usually, is they're building completely new apps for this, you know, new way of interacting with things. So I don't know. Also, like again, one of the big use cases for AR and VR stuff is gaming. So is this gonna be like a supercharged Meta Quest? That could be cool. I really don't want to give Meta any of my money, but I would like to eventually try one of these cool standalone VR setups. So if the, you know, cheaper Apple Glass comes out next year and it's like not terrible, maybe, and it has games, I don't know if they're interested in doing that at all. They're sure not interested on it for the Mac. So if the Mac's any indication, this will have like one game that came out on PC 2 or 3 years ago, and that's it. That's the game you get.
Well, you're opening a weird little Pandora's box with that topic. So first, I kind of want to address it. Well, actually, I'll work backwards. As far as gaming on a Mac, I think at this stage we do know it's something that is going to eventually just catch up and happen, but whatever. But it's not like gaming isn't a pretty big market on iOS, both iPad and iPhone. Yeah. So the question here is, I think, are game developers going to see the Apple headset and go, oh, this is something to land rush, let's get something out there as quick as possible? Like, you know, are we going to see just throwing an example, is Rovio going to have a launch day version of Angry Birds that you can play? Because right. A, that would actually be kind of cool. B, I'm not even a big Angry Birds fan, but even I kind of would want to play that.
Yeah.
And Or B, is this going to turn out like the Mac, where developers are going to see it and go, "Oh, okay, it's not that we don't want to, but we just don't think there are going to be enough customers to justify making something." And then they're going to start looking at everyone else stop making things and then say, "Okay, well, no one else is making it. And if no one else is making it, then the customers aren't going to come. And if the customers aren't going to come, then we don't need to make it either." So, it's kind of this circular logic that will keep game developers from really approaching this. Honestly, I don't know which it's going to be, but part of me thinks that Apple at some point is probably going to be courting game developers pretty hard, because this is a product that I think, I'm just guessing here, but I think Apple really wants this to be a very successful product. And if that's true, they're probably going to have to spend some money. Probably a lot of money.
It really comes down to how good is this at both, because like AR and VR are two very different things.
Yes.
And it's really hard, bordering on impossible, to build something that's really good at both of them. Because if you want good VR, you need full isolation, which means a big honking thing on your head.
I would argue,
blocking out your...
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I would argue that if you can do really good AR, then you can also repurpose it easily enough to do really good VR, assuming the one feature that they have claimed is going to be on here, where you can like turn a dial and just flip between the two. Assuming that that is going to work the way that they presumably expect it to, then VR should be possible to do really well. Because it sounds like they're over-engineering this so that it is going to be a really good AR system that is like full screen AR. And if that's true, VR should be easy to do in addition. I don't know if that'll be the case, but from what I'm aware of, I think that's plausible. Anyway,
because most of the AR stuff, it's just like a pane of glass, that's great, but you can't do VR with that. For VR, you need like fully encompassed headset thing with screens that completely cover what you're doing. And usually how the way to do this in one device has been is you put two cameras in front of the VR headset roughly where your eyes are and just pass through the video, which is fine if you're like, need to quickly switch it on and like check where you are in a room, make sure you're not about to slam, your VR controller into your monitor. But you can't like walk around doing that. You have no depth perception. You'll trip and fall. So I don't know what solution they're going to go with here. I'd like them to try with games more in general. That might be one of my biggest complaints with Apple right now, is that it seems like they, like, obviously the iPhone is so entrenched that they don't really have to do anything there for that to be good at gaming, except keep up with hardware, which they're doing. But they're not really doing anything on the Mac. Don't know what this headset will be like, because if they're putting like an M1 chip in this or something, it's going to be really good for VR games, because a lot of these games are being built for, or there's kind of the two classes. There's like the VR games that running on like a PS5 or a PC, and then there's the games that are low visual fidelity enough to shove on a Quest, and those in theory would run incredibly well on an Apple headset if they toss an M1 in there, because the Quest is on, I want to say the Quest 2 has like a Snapdragon 830 something, I think. Make sure I'm not making that up. But like, in theory, Apple could easily beat that.
Yeah. So gaming is certainly an interesting aspect to this. I honestly, like, this is something Oculus obviously kind of, I don't want to say won, but they won the first battle.
Well, they won it by selling at or under cost for a long time and just killing all other competition.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
They more or less kind of forced Vive out of the market, HTC's product, and then nobody else really gave much competition. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify myself, the Quest 2 uses a Qualcomm Snapdragon XR2, which is based on the Snapdragon 865. So again, Apple could very easily beat that if they put even just an M1 in there, honestly.
So, all things considered, gaming, it's far from a one thing. Like, no one controls VR gaming yet. At this stage, as far as I can tell, PlayStation basically kind of has it on consoles. So, Sony has done a good job staking their claim, but it's not like Microsoft can't come back and put out their own product and basically offer a comparable enough experience. In the realm of PC gaming, I mean, you've got the Oculus products, but I don't think that really signifies ownership of this space yet. Plus, I can't wait to see whether or not if this is going to be like an extension mode in some way for like upper tier gaming. Is Apple going to make it so it only works with like Macs? Because it's hard to imagine them making this work with PCs. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if I see them making like going all the way and making it possible to run like a PC VR game on a Mac and have this act as like the VR display. It doesn't seem like them.
Well, even just using this with a PC, not even like making the games run on a Mac, just letting letting them run on a PC and using this as your viewer. Okay. I don't know if they're gonna try to work out the compatibility or match an API or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't see them doing that. Maybe someone will make an app.
Exactly. I feel like but that's something that'll get hacked together, maybe. But
yeah, maybe it's all up to how open Apple lets this be.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing where like iPad Pros can do a lot, and they have a nice USB Type-C port right there, but developers can't really do a lot with that.
No. And obviously this is going to have standalone. That everybody knows this much now. It's got its own standalone mode. So gaming, I think, is going to be, it's certainly going to be an area that Apple is trying to compete in. I don't know how hard they're going to try to compete, but I genuinely think it's going to be fairly hard because, again, I think they want to win. At least they want to stake some ground, and without controlling gaming, you're really not going to be successful there. That being said, I'm very curious about the AR possibilities, because a lot of companies are trying to build AR. We know Google is doing it again. Well, saying again is a little wrong, because Google Glass was never AR. It was never VR. Everyone who said it was either of those things did not understand what AR and VR were, or they were just saying them not trying to be precise. There's obviously Microsoft is working on AR again, or still. And there are other companies, I forget the names of all of them, but there are several other companies that are trying to make AR headsets of some kind. But the one thing I still haven't heard, and I keep waiting to hear this, what the hell is going to be the, I hate the term, but killer app? What is going to be the thing that compels people to start using these things, to decide that this is a product that they actually need to have or need to use? I haven't seen anything yet, outside of the fact that, they'll be kind of, if you can get something like this down to the size of like sunglasses, I think everyone's in agreement. It would be really cool if we can have like navigation, good navigation in a sunglasses style format. Cheers. I want that. That sounds really cool. But outside of navigation, what's the killer app? And navigation is barely that good. Like it would be good in some specific circumstances, but not in general. So what is this? What is someone going to make that makes this worth it?
Yeah, I don't know. And again, like I'm really curious what angle Apple will come at this from. Like, is this more like a Mac than an iPhone? Like, what are they building up from an iPhone or building down from a Mac? Like, what's going on here? Because that changes what this can do. So yeah, I don't know. And again, like, it depends on the exact hardware, but like, if this is like one of the existing VR headsets that does like pass-through video for the AR, then you're not doing navigation with that. You're going to die in a car accident.
Yeah.
Because you lose your depth perception. But yeah, so I don't know. It's, and yeah, I don't know, because like I feel like they can't come out and just be like, yeah, it's got like the games you guys like, because it's like everyone is going to go to the same exact games are on this $300 headset.
Yeah.
So they need to do something different. I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they could do, because also like I still have yet to see like a compelling use case for this in like a productivity setting that isn't something very specialized, which is why Google is selling Glass to enterprise customers for forever. Because like, if you're a giant company with your own software team and you have like people who are using their hands all the time and don't want to keep looking down at like a phone or some other handheld thing, and you can just put it on your face, that's great. But there's not a whole lot of like normal people things where that's a compelling enough. I don't know. And kind of like you said, it took them a while to figure out what to do with the Apple Watch too. And that was in theory a much simpler sell, because it's just you get your phone alerts on your arm. That's pretty cool. And it's a much better fitness tracker.
The Apple Watch was a, smartwatches, I'm not going to say we're a proven market. Like, Pebble had some success early on, somehow. Obviously, there were fitness trackers. There's no big mystery about that being a, at its time, a successful market, which was ultimately reduced down to just a feature that belongs on other products. And Android Wear was already a thing, which had proven to an extent that there was a market for this. Apple was walking through the footsteps of other companies. There was no big mystery that was a thing, and they knew a lot of paths to take. The same could not be said for the same can't be said for these headsets. Like, no one has proven, outside of the Meta Quest, basically, no one has proven that these even work, that they can be profitable or successful in the market yet. So Apple has to tread new ground.
Yeah, which they don't really do all that often in terms of like new form factors or new product segments. Like, they're very good at like optimizing something that already exists. Like, they took a computer and made it have all the advantages of my phone. Yeah, so It's gonna be interesting. Of course, I don't have $3,000 to drop on that headset, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're not the kinds of reviewers that Apple sends stuff to.
No.
By the way, I just want to give credit to it because it really got a laugh out of me. But Austin's comment, the killer feature is going to be a permanent beauty mode filter. I'm sorry, but that was hilarious.
You know.
But yeah, honestly, one of the questions not questions, but one of the answers to a question I think I have is, who's going to buy this? At $3,000, who is going to buy this thing? And the only answer, I can only come up with 3 answers. It's going to be obviously hardcore Apple fans, and just generally the people with more money than they know what to do with. Basically, and this is one group, by the way, it's people who will just buy it because they can afford to buy it, and that's it. They don't have a use for it. They don't even know what they're going to use it for. They just want to buy it so they can have it. The second group, I think, is going to be MKBHD and down. The YouTubers, the influencers, anyone on TikTok or wherever, where you've got a following. Presumably, your following helps to generate enough money for you to afford whatever you want. And I know this sounds like the first group, but what I'm saying is these are the people who will pay for it so that it can help in generating content. They just want it so they can do review, or they just want it so that they can do gaming videos with it, or whatever. They're getting it for their business. They're not really getting it because they want it. And the third group, which I think is going to be a really tiny group, developers. There will be some developers who try to land rush this. Because honestly, that is very literally why I got a Google Glass. I wanted to land rush it. And I built a couple of apps for Google Glass when we didn't know that Google was never ever going to make a paid store. So that kind of sucked. Thank you for that one. But yeah, I think there will be a decent portion of developers that jump on this thing because they want to build something up front and have it ready and shippable. But all told, we're not in the greatest economic circumstances. So, the first group is the first group. It's people with money and they can afford it, or they'll find a way to afford it because they're big enough Apple fans. They exist, they'll buy it, but I don't think that's going to amount to huge numbers. The second group, a bunch of influencers, we know that's not a huge number of people. It's not insignificant, but it's also not significant. And then the number of developers, again, it's going to be a relatively small number. And what stands out to me is none of these people are what I would call the target market. Normal people. None of them are the normal people. None of them are the people who just come right out and tell their neighbor, oh, hey, look at this thing I got. You should get one too. It's not that group.
That's not even the target market. If this is going to be $3,000, I don't know what that market is. Because I'm $3,000 gets you a spec'd up MacBook Pro, Mac Studio. You can get an actual computer for that, and this is a headset that will have I don't know what apps, or I don't know. Again, if this is coming from the Mac and it can be a standalone device, I don't know. Will this have a desktop mode where if you take a keyboard with you, you can just sit and stare into the distance and get some work done on the go? I don't know.
I like that idea, and I gotta say, believe me, I cannot begin to express how much I desperately want something I can put on my face and use as basically a giant monitor. This is my fantasy because I don't want to have to sit at a desk, or if I go to a coffee shop, I would love the idea of being able to just plug something in and have a large monitor instead of just relying on a tiny little laptop screen. But I don't think that's what this first version is going to be for. And honestly, like, if no one's ever tried these kinds of things, usually the resolution is not good enough for you to be able to use anything like that anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. $3,000. It's hard to pick. It's hard to find an audience for this. I'm sure there would be people that buy it. I just don't think it's going to be that many, which is, you know, that lends to the whole thing about they don't expect to sell huge numbers of these. They don't expect this to be profitable in its first generation.
Yeah. So there's that headset. There's also a bunch of like other Apple products that might be announced that might at WWDC might be announced before, or like, you know, randomly show up on the Apple Store one day. They do that sometimes, or might take longer, and they, you know, we have a nice fall Mac launch. Mark was mentioning that there's 2 new iMacs in development with a new M series chip. He doesn't say what the chip is, so unsure if that's like an M2 or maybe an M3. I would imagine M3.
If it's going to be this year, it is not an M3. I mean, I can't say that with any sort of like authority, but
yeah,
you know, just in practical terms, we only just got the M2 Pro earlier this year, and presumably, was it just the Pro? Actually, now I'm not even sure. I'll look that up, but go ahead and keep talking. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be an M3 yet.
So yeah, those are the new iMacs. He said the computer will see some of its internal components relocated and redesigned, and the manufacturing process for attaching the iMac stand is different. It's not expected to go into mass production for at least 3 months, and he wrote this like a month ago, I think. Yeah, this is March 5th. So that's it's going to be interesting if, you know, that's internal changes. I don't know if that what will be reflected there in the real design, because the last iMac update was like a complete overhaul. They like all new build, the colors were new, because, you know, the older iMacs, they were not good, because the Apple kept having to put laptop Intel chips in them because the desktop chips were too power hungry and generated too much heat. So you kind of just had like the performance of a laptop, but in the space of a desktop. So it wasn't really winning in any regard. But don't have to do that with the new iMacs or with the Apple Silicon chips. So they gave it a nice redesign, made it even thinner. So I don't know if what they would do for another redesign. I don't know. Maybe some stuff will trickle down from the studio display to the iMac. It kind of already has the same like webcam setup with the mode that like follows you around and stuff. I know it's on other Apple stuff too, but so interesting stuff.
Yeah. So as Kirby points out, and yep, it's confirmed. The Pro and the Max, the M2 Pro and Max came out earlier this year for, of course, the MacBook Pros. But yeah, I still don't see any chance the M3 is going to show up anytime this year. So,
I will say my frustration with Apple also at this moment is the way they are, like how all of these upgrade cycles are just completely all over the place.
Yes.
Like I know there's like a million reasons why they do it this way, but like earlier, or not earlier this year, last year, when I got my M1 MacBook Air, and I was like, hey, this is a pretty good computer. I think I'll get a Mac desktop too. Um, I was like, okay, great. Because of even though there's like already computers out with like the M2 chips, my options for a desktop are either the Mac Mini that they came out with when the M1 was brand new, or over $1,000 more and get the entry level Mac Studio. Those were my only two options.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't like done any into Mac Minis yet, and they just did that like a couple months ago. So they're so now like if they put a M3 in the new iMacs, and I know the like difference doesn't matter all that much in the versions, especially when you're cross shopping between like a base M3, and because I think with the first two generations, the base M2 was like kind of roughly an M1 Pro. Is
Yeah.
the Pro the first step up? Again, the naming is
Yeah, it was
really
definitely
bad
below
too.
it was definitely below the Max and the Ultra. But
Yeah,
yeah, it wasn't
yeah,
it wasn't
it's frustrating that the SoCs are kind of all over the place, depending on when you're shopping.
yeah. So for reference, because I think this plays into a lot of what you're saying. If you go shopping for an iMac right now, the only option is an Apple M1 chip, and we're not talking about all the M1s. We're talking about the baby basic M1
The baby
chip.
basic that doesn't let you have more than 8 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
Or
No,
is it
16.
12?
It's
Oh,
16.
okay. Okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, so you can at least get to 16 gigs of RAM, but you have like your upgrade choice in the chip is you can either have the 7-core GPU or the 8-core GPU. I mean, this was something people were making fun of when the original M1 chip came out. Was really like, is this just like a case of you've got the high and low bin chips, and you can pay to have one where
Yeah.
one core is not disabled? And
Intel moment.
yeah, very. But I mean, it's still a good computer. Yep, here's the I've got the page open. Here's the 8 gig of unified memory, or you can bump it up to 16. But yeah, your options for an iMac are currently, I mean, this is the store right now. There's not another option here. And meanwhile, we've got M2 Pro and Max chips sitting out there in other computers. Why the iMac was left to just languish is a really bizarre choice. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
And also, like, why just the again, like, because of when it came out, it is part of the answer for this, but also, like, should the iMac be limited to just Apple's lowest end Mac chip? Like,
Well,
I
I would
know,
say
but I know,
no.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like before the call, you were mentioning the iMac Pro, which is when they tried to put a better chip in the iMac. But like again, they don't have like the same thermal constraints anymore. So it's been really weird watching. Like obviously, like more options is good. Like personally, I would probably never buy an iMac just because I don't like the display being integrated with the computer. Like I like being able to choose both of those things independently. Like I've had the same Dell Ultrawide for like 5 computers over like probably 6 years. I don't know how long I've had this thing.
Probably
So
long
like
enough that you should replace it, but
yeah, oh yeah. I mean it's yeah. Well, it's fine. Now that I have the Xbox, I'm not like rushing to get a high refresh rate PC monitor anymore. So this
fair
thing
enough.
can keep going. Yeah. So yeah, like it'd be nice if there was more options. And again, the iMac's also kind of weird because they went really crazy with the colors in a way that they haven't done with any of the other Macs. Where is my like bright green MacBook Air Apple. Where is it? Or even Mac Mini. I don't see the Mac Mini almost ever because it's under my legs. But if it was a fun color, that'd be cool. When I reach down to do a power reset, and see how cool the color is.
But yeah, Apple's desktop line is really confusing right now. Frankly, it was even confusing if you go a few years back to when they launched the iMac Pro, which was a one generation kind of failed product because it was interesting. It had some nice stuff to it, but it was overpriced. It was definitely thermally challenged. It had some real thermal problems. And apparently a moderate.
It's almost like yeah. I wonder what could possibly happen when you put a power demanding x86 chip directly behind a giant monitor.
Oh, don't forget that it also had a pretty powerful GPU. Well,
they stuck a Radeon card in there.
Yeah, so
it's like it's a miracle they didn't all catch on fire and explode.
Probably a few did, but
yeah. It's literally like you're building a gaming laptop, but it's a display.
So they did some weird things, and clearly they have let this product languish in a really I don't want to say in a dumb way, but it's like they forgot it, and it's not really clear why. And given, I mean, I understand that Apple has kind of a product strategy where this makes sense. It's a lot more cost efficient to make products and sell products the way that they do. But given the way that the chips are coming out, it's starting to become more and more clear that one thing Apple could be doing, they're not doing it, but they could be doing it, is keep releasing products, the product lines that they have, but they absolutely could just say, you know what, we're done with with having a split of generations. Now, when we announce let's say the M3 chip, the entire product line, all of it, is now going to be available with an M3. We're getting rid of the M2 chip, at least base level M2. And in a few months later this year, whatever, we'll announce an M3 Pro and Max and Ultra, whatever. And for the products where we think that those will make sense, obviously you don't have to ship a MacBook Air with an M3 Ultra. That would be ridiculous. But they should be upgrading all their devices basically at the same time, or within short time spans. I can get it. Like, maybe you don't want to do a huge run. You don't want people hitting all their product lines the same way that people are hitting like iPhones on launch day. That could be problematic. But maybe, when you launch a new chip, start with the MacBook Pros or MacBook Airs, and then every month or every other month, new product gets added to that upgrade. Something like that. Like, they can do this. They're just choosing not to. And it kind of is starting to suck.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously completely different in industry and a completely different way of building things, because Apple's, this is a system on a chip, so it's different. But like, that's exactly how like every game console revision worked, where like you buy, Microsoft comes out with the Xbox 360, and like a year or two later there's a slightly different model that might look the same, but they've moved some of the internals around and made it die less often, and then they keep doing that, and they'll slowly just introduce different motherboard revisions. So like, there's other times where that happens. Obviously, again, completely different. Like, none of those Xbox 360s were like generational upgrades in performance. They were just more power. Like, I mean, Nintendo did this too. They put a new SoC in the Switch, but it's the same clock speed. It's just more power efficient.
Yeah. And those minor upgrades a lot of times aren't even necessarily about upgrading the power so much as they are just like lowering the cost, or some component became unavailable, and so they were like, well, we can replace it with this other component. It happens to be better or maybe not. And, you know, it's supposed to be totally transparent to customers. No customer is supposed to be able to tell that they replaced this thing or that thing.
Yeah, I just something better than this would be nice, because that is a big thing. I wrote briefly about this when I did a blog post about like kind of going back to Macs, which is like at any the PC industry is really good at this, where as soon as a new like I think I want to say in January, I'm not sure, whenever Intel announced the 13th gen laptop chips, like a month later there were laptops you could buy with those chips, and like every manufacturer for the past couple months has been updating their laptops and their gaming laptops to just use that chip. So pretty quickly, like everyone who's selling computers with these, or at least the high-end ones that like ideally need the fastest thing, already have the new chip swapped in. So I again, I know this is different because the Intel chips are not system-on-a-chips. You can pretty much just swap them in. Like again, Qualcomm kind of also does that, where a lot of their chips are like pin compatible, sort of, with previous Snapdragon chips, so you can reuse most of the same board. But just Apple, I'd like to see Apple do something a little bit better. Like, again, don't have one of your computers on an M1 when you're about to start selling M3s.
Right.
It's kind of frustrating.
Really quickly to address what Kirby said, and I'm sure that this is what is meant by the follow-up message, but Kirby said the only good desktop from Apple is the M2 or M2 Pro Mac Mini, and then notes desktop that's worth it. I think very predictably, I'm going to quickly argue Mac Studio is a ridiculously powerful thing. It is a really good desktop. And given the completely ridiculous power level of it, it may still be technically an M1 chip, but it's an M1 Ultra that has been souped up to absurd levels. So in fairness, it is crazy powerful. It is by far the most powerful desktop that Apple has. It's the most powerful computer that Apple currently sells. Well above any Mac Pro, well above any MacBook Pros, well, any MacBooks, well above any of the other desktops. Even against an M2 Max that has been completely decked out. Like, it still trounces all of those. But yeah, to be fair, base model is still $2,000, and a souped up version is $4,000 to start, or quote unquote to start. So yeah, it is an expensive thing, and whether or not it's worth it depends on what you're doing with it. So
yeah, like the Mac Studio, again, like I still kind of want one. I don't
exactly.
I don't
like,
have any need for one. Yeah, I'm just like,
use
man,
it,
that's
we
really,
want it.
yeah. I want Photoshop to open in like 0.2 seconds faster.
Honestly, I bet it would be a lot faster than that, but yeah.
I mean, it already opens really fast. That's my problem. Like, damn, the computer I bought is too good. I can't justify.
Yeah, it does make it harder to upgrade. Yeah.
So, but yeah, like definitely the M2 Pro. I don't know if that's like kind of a similar value proposition. It's not like super amazing value. Base M2 Mac Mini. Oh man, you're not going to get better at that. I think it's $500. That base M2 Mac Mini. That is such a steal.
Oh yeah.
Like I really like my M1 Mini. Like it's already really fast, and Apple's selling this for it's $599, not $500. Okay.
I was gonna say $500. God, is it really that cheap? Though doesn't it go
$499
on
with eDo
sale
discount
from time to time?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I think that's why I was thinking of that, because it did go on.
Oh, and also
either 50 or 100 off.
Educational discount, you can get it for $499. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I got my Mini with my work discount, which I think is the same as the educational discount. But yeah,
Probably.
it's
Or
a
thereabouts.
very good computer.
And yeah, without question, if I had the money just to throw at it for the hell of it, I'd probably be picking up a Mac Mini M2. Either, well, I don't think I'd have much reason for the Pro, but yeah, I'd probably pick up an M2 Mac Mini just to run as like a home server of some kind. But
Yeah, it's like that's a really power efficient server.
yeah, that's the thing. It is a genuinely power efficient
Yeah.
server. I'm not sure on this, but I
And
think
it's got,
probably
you know,
more
like, it
efficient
does-
than like most of the NAS boxes out there, while
Oh,
still being
yeah,
able
probably.
to outperform them by leaps and bounds. I mean, you could put
Yeah.
this thing next to a TV, use it as your like Plex server, NAS player, all of that stuff. You could just hook it to a TV and use it this way. And it would also be able to handle lots of other functions all in one box, and all for a shockingly accessible price, considering like if you go buy a Synology NAS, or for that matter, honestly, like I'm reviewing a NAS right now that is not much cheaper, and it is basically the cheapest thing out there. Like, it's one of the lowest priced NAS boxes there is, or rather the lowest priced company, and this is kind of like one of their mid levels, but still it's not much cheaper than that base Mac Mini. You know, granted, you still have to come up with ways to mount the drives and stuff like that, but this is such a good price, and it's really accessible. There's a lot you can do with this.
Yeah, and like it, you know, it's not expandable at all, but even that very base model, it does have Thunderbolt 4, USB 4. It's got gigabit Ethernet. You can bump that up to 2 gigabit or 10
gig, 10 gigabit.
10 gig, yeah. Yeah, it's like, ooh, that's a really, really stinking good deal. Again, I really wish they had that when I bought my Mini, but again, my computer's too good. It's not worth the cost and paying to buy a new one and sell this and set everything up again.
Yeah. And
I could justify it if Mac had games, but it doesn't. So
yeah, well, someday. Just certainly not in the someday I expected it to be. I figured the someday would come relatively quickly. It seems like they are moving at a snail's pace to figure out how to get gaming to or attract game developers to the Mac. Austin said Apple Silicon is so ridiculously good, kind of mad about it. Honestly, I'm betting anything so is Intel, AMD, and almost anyone who's setting up like major server farms. Right now, I'm sure so many companies are furious at the fact that they can't buy. Like, obviously, you can buy a bunch of Mac Minis and rack mount them, but you can't just buy Apple Silicon in a form factor that you want it, and that would be incredible for servers.
Yeah, can't buy a M2 Mini and slap Windows Server on there.
Nope.
Or really server Linux.
Not yet.
There's Linux, yeah, there's Linux ports, but you would not want to do anything production on that.
Now, that's not to say you couldn't just use Mac OS, but you know, you do have to jump through a few extra hoops to really make it play well with the way that a lot of big server installations would do that.
Yeah. So the new iMacs. Also, there's supposedly in development a 15-inch MacBook Air, which is interesting. Honestly, like I go back and forth on laptops. Like, I think if I needed to do about any more work on my laptop, then I think the 13-inch would not be enough. So 15-inch could be cool. But again, it kind of gets the thing that's arising is like, how some of these product segments just they don't really make sense. Like, what is it? What's a 15-inch MacBook Air? Is that just the Pro? Like, what's the difference now? Is it the Pro with? Is it just the Pro with no fan?
I was gonna say, is it just a
fanless
Pro?
They just, yeah, because they just updated the MacBook Air to have almost the same design as the MacBook Pros. It's a little bit like boxier, but
okay. You know what? I think I might be able to come up with an answer to this, and it feels like a dumb answer, but I think it might also be kind of the most practical one. Right now, if you get a MacBook Pro, and bear in mind, I'm just straight up ignoring the 13-inch because the 13-inch is a stupid product that doesn't deserve to exist. If you want to get a 14-inch MacBook Pro, just the 14-inch, let's get that on screen in a second, your base price is $2,000.
Right.
So when they say that they're working on a 15-inch MacBook Air, what I think they're aiming to do is release a product that is fundamentally a MacBook Pro in size and layout, but at that price point of a just a really large MacBook Air, because your current let's see, the current MacBook Air with an M2 chip, this is, what size is this? Is this 13-inch? Wait, what size is it? Oh yeah, 13.6 inch. Okay, if you buy this, if you go for an M2 chip, well, that's the same. Okay, yeah, so your base price is $1,200. Bump this up to a 15-inch screen, you're probably looking at, I don't know, $1,400-ish, give or take.
Yeah.
So $600 less, I'm ballparking here, but $600 less than a MacBook Pro of an actual smaller screen. Like, that's compelling. If someone's main thing is they want to watch movies on a plane, or they just want a larger screen to do development on, but they don't need all the power and other perks of the Pro. The biggest perks, I think, are really just the port setup. Oh wait, no. Yeah, the port setup, there's an extra port or two on a MacBook Pro. Honestly, it's hard to find differences between the Air and the Pro right now.
That's more what I mean. Like, not that like a 15-inch MacBook Pro doesn't need to exist, but it's like, do we need to have a 15-inch MacBook Pro and also a 15-inch MacBook Air? Because they're almost the same thing. At some point, you're just charging too much for one of them.
Yeah. But I think basically if they just make an Air that is a bigger screen, the whole point is you're still going to charge a lot for it. You're still going to increase that price, but it becomes tempting just purely because you're putting out a lower power laptop that has a bigger screen. So I think it makes sense. It's just, somewhere in there, probably it does expose that you are overcharging for one product or another.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's also this really weird Mac Pro that's rumored, because like when Apple came out with the Mac Studio, they were like, yeah, this isn't a replacement for the Pro, we're going to get to that eventually. And around that time there were rumors that there was going to be like this additional tier of the Apple Silicon chip, the M2 Extreme, that was going to be more powerful than what they could theoretically put in a Mac Studio, which would give the Mac Pro a reason to exist theoretically. But that supposedly got canceled. Again, I'm using a lot of supposedly and reportedly because this is all like two sources basically. So
two sources and a lot of theory crafting from the community.
So Mark Gurman is saying, I believe, that the Mac Pro in development is using a M2 Ultra. So the new version of what you can get on the highest spec Mac Studio right now. So the question is like, what's the difference then between the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro at this point? Are they going to just not put a, because again, also the new Mac Mini, you can buy it with an M2 or an M2 Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mac Studio used to be in that range where you buy with either the Pro or the Ultra. So now the Mac Mini has cannibalized the cheaper Studio, unless you need more thermals or something. I don't really know.
Yeah.
And then, so it's like, does the new Mac Pro only serve to cannibalize the upper tier Mac Studio, and Apple's just going to kill the Studio after the first one? I don't know. Because, again, also the theoretical advantage of a Mac Pro would be upgradability, but it's not clear Apple cares about that, really.
Yeah.
Because you can't... There's not really... Because, again, how they built this, how they've made it so nice is that everything's integrated. So even if we run into the same problem where we had that first round of Thunderbolt external GPUs, where it's like it's just going to be worse because it's not integrated in the same way. So I don't know.
So in all fairness, I think we're approaching the point where the Mac Pro is also that product where finding its audience is tricky. Because it is a very expensive computer no matter what. The Mac Studio seems to be solving a lot of the challenges and requests from customers. But, there is still a very adamant group of people that are singing and yelling that they want a Mac Pro. The classic cheese grater Mac Pro, which, was a design that was well loved, despite its bizarre design choices. It's something that hasn't been upgraded in ages. I mean, we're talking about a product. This is still the one and only product Apple sells that has, or rather, is it the only thing that still has Intel chips? Okay, I thought so. It has Intel Xeon chips.
And it was just this and one of the Mac Minis.
Yeah. So this is still shipping with Intel Xeon chips. It's powerful-ish, but almost any M2 now kind of runs circles around this product because it hasn't been updated in a pretty long time. And at its ridiculous price point, which I'm pulling up, the cheapest you can get one for right now is for $6,000 starting price. It's really expensive for something that my MacBook Pro can beat. My M1 Max MacBook Pro can beat the hell out of this thing. That's not very good of an argument for having a product like this. So, I'm curious what the target market for something like this is. And obviously I know full well it's MKBHD. But
right, excluding YouTubers. Who
yeah,
buys
exactly.
This.
Excluding YouTubers.
If I'm Pixar, what am I buying for all my rendering farms?
Yeah.
Or, visual artists, whatever.
To be fair, strictly speaking, if you're talking about rendering farms, you don't actually want to get something like this. This is wildly overpriced. It's actually better to get something like a bunch of minis and basically use them as pods. They just collaboratively can render. But something like this is really good if you're doing something like live presentation, where you need to have a lot of video streams running through a single computer. That single computer needs to be able to do a lot with them Well, see, audio and video streams.
Yeah.
And it needs to do so without having thermal challenge, which is something the Mac Studio, in theory, would still... It should probably be able to handle it, but might not be able to. A Mac Pro is the no questions asked, like, this can handle it. That's historically what these were very popular for. And I'm sure 3D artists and people like that are probably going to want something like this too, just because, you know, they're always going to want the most powerful thing they can get their hands on, and this likely will become it. But yeah, I don't know.
It like, theoretically, if they decided to build because that Extreme chip was canceled, this is supposed to have like an M2 Ultra, which in theory is just a replacement for the M1 Ultra, like this sort of the same constraints in terms of power and thermals.
Which is really to say that they just packed as much onto the chips as possible and put them into basically a batch design.
Yeah, but maybe the M2 one is different and they can't as easily put it inside. Yeah, so I don't know why this would exist against a Mac Studio. I guess what frustrates me is, like, there's a lot of things Apple could do that's not like a GPU slot. Like, you put a whole fucking drive bay in one of these. Like, that's what's annoying to me is, like, Apple, like, I think honestly on the Mini, like, because the current Mini shell was designed like 10 years ago for all the cooling that like the Intel chips needed, I would really like it if they sold it, if they sold the Minis with like a SATA slot in there somewhere, just somewhere to add more storage, with the understanding that, like, yes, this is not supposed to replace the main internal storage, which is going to be much faster, but just give me something where I don't have like a bunch of hard drives scattered connected through USB or Thunderbolt or whatever. So like they could do that on a Mac Pro, like put a bunch of, not a bunch, but some either NVMe or SATA drives, just something in there. They could do.
Okay, I'm going to kind of cut you off and throw. God, this the thing I'm about to say is going to sound so pretentious, or actually, I don't know that that's even the right word, but it's going to sound obnoxious in a dumb way. But I think it's also a question that they're probably going to ask themselves and come up with an answer that everyone's going to look at and go, "Oh God, you suck," but we also understand it. How many people who would pay $6,000 and up for a computer are sitting there going, "Oh, I really need a bay so I can put my old school spinning disk drive into this thing."
Right.
They're not. The customer who's willing to spend that much on this computer is likely sitting there going, "Oh no, I'm going to stuff a bunch of M.2 drives in here." Like,
yeah,
it's all solid state. Nobody wants to stick spinning disks in here. The counter argument to that, I'm going to immediately spoil my own argument. There's absolutely going to be a bunch of people out there saying, no, seriously, we really do actually want to stick a spinning disk in here, but we want a removable, like hot swappable spinning disk drive so that we can stick it in, do really fast backups, and then pull that thing out and, toss it on a shelf or whatever.
Yeah.
That customer exists. And if we're being honest, the smart solution to that is actually to use a NAS with a 10 gigabit connection, because you can actually move data possibly faster that way than you could using like an internal spinning disk, but whatever. That would still be the better solution for something like that, but still, there are going to be people asking for that. I don't know if Apple cares enough to deliver that for them, though. And that's the thing. they have no reason to keep this form factor. They don't have a reason to keep making a giant cheese grater, because no one is going to be putting a bunch of spinning discs in it. The counterpoint is, what then do you put in this thing? The components can still be really tiny.
Snacks.
Huh?
Snacks.
Actually, yes. It doubles as a piñata.
Yeah.
You just hit it a bunch of times and snacks roll out.
Yeah, you just open up the front and you've got your bag of chips in there.
Flaming hot Cheetos, baby.
It'll keep your drink cool.
Actually, keeping your drink cool would be kind of a neat thing. Anyway,
yeah.
But honestly, what I'm wondering, will they finally break down and say, yes, we're going to give you the GPU, the option to stick in video cards? Because that, honestly, I think is the only thing anyone actually wants out of this. The ability to stuff in there like 4090s. Like, everyone wants some NVIDIA cards to stuff in here. That's
also
request.
Yeah, because like the thing with this is like this new architecture sort of demands that the graphics be on the die, but like they could still engineer this in a way where like the desktop graphics cards are just extra.
Yes.
Like they're like SLI or whatever. They're there that like AI tools can access them, but like they're maybe not necessarily like driving the displays. They're just sort of there.
Or they could drive a display of your, I mean, you could develop Mac OS so that it does support choosable external displays or choosable external video cards. Or sorry, I say external video cards when I mean not the built-in GPU, but rather GPUs that you have added to, you know, a slot somewhere. You could develop Mac OS to support this. That is not out of the question. In fact, Mac OS literally does already support this. It's a feature that's been in the MacBooks for years. Because a lot of MacBooks had the ability to basically run regular operations on the CPU, and then they had an extra GPU that would fire up when it came time to like run a game or run any graphically intense stuff. They can do this. This is not out of the question by any stretch. Frankly, I think the bigger challenge is actually just supporting, again, NVIDIA cards.
Yeah, it's this is the same thing as the glasses, right? I don't really know what they could do here, so I'm interested to see what route they take. But I mean, it would also just be really funny if they were like, guys, we did it. We made an upgradable Apple Silicon machine. And you find out the upgrade is just that you take the entire motherboard out and then you slot the new one in next year because they can't do anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be very funny.
Yeah, and a part of me,
or it's just a like Mac Studio, but in this tower form factor, they've got a lot of cool RGB lights that you can customize in the settings.
Apple doing RGB would be that'd be something.
That would be incredible. Yeah, you're like fucking cool as shit editing your Blender project with the like spinning rainbow effects going on.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
So overall, it's weird because part of me,
no idea if any of those are coming on WWDC.
Yeah, I was gonna say part of me is even doubtful that this is gonna happen at WWDC. They might pre-announce it or tease it. They might. This could just be a thing that they're tinkering with, and Gurman doesn't really know what's coming. I mean, he has been wrong before. It's not like he is just receiving a free access to the roadmap. Though a lot of times he kind of seems like he does. But you know, we'll see. It may be a really good time to hype it up. But I will say this: This is also talking about a lot of hardware for a WWDC announcement. WWDC, historically, while they do announce new hardware sometimes, they don't go overboard. And like his predictions for a new iMac, obviously announcing the headset, which, okay, that's not going to be actually launching immediately, but all of these products, oh, of course, also the new MacBook Air, like having upwards of 4 products in the possible pipeline for announcement, that's not going to happen. I'm just going to call it out right now. I don't think that happens. It's too many products that are all too different. If they're going to do any of this stuff, I think they're going to probably announce that the headset is a thing. They're going to show it off and then say, we're going to be shipping it, quote, later this year. Or maybe they'll commit to like the following year, something like that. And maybe they will announce one of these other computer releases. And yeah. I would bet that is it. And if they're gonna do any of them, it should be the iMac. Honestly, like that's the one that needs it. But on the other hand, if they're gonna do the iMac, it almost deserves its own event because it is such a big update. We'll see.
Yeah, and Apple also just dumped the new Mac Minis on the Apple Store earlier this year that didn't have an event at all. So one or more of these computers could just show up on the store at some point.
Yeah. Though to be fair, I almost, if it's going to be any of them, I'd say it's going to be that MacBook Air.
Yeah, and also I should clarify, the Mac Mini one was not planned to be that way. Because when they released this, it was accompanied by a video in the same exact style of their Mac presentation from months prior.
Yeah.
And I think even the video, like this isn't like 100% confirmation of anything, but if I recall correctly, the video file on their website for the video was like labeled as last year. So it really seems likely that they were going to announce it, but they didn't have the parts or whatever done, so they just pushed it off.
Well, somebody also, because there's always someone who nitpicks to this level, somebody looked through the video of the announcement when it was expected to happen, and then they looked through, obviously, the video that came out with the Mac Mini. And they basically said, oh yeah, if you look at this particular time in their presentation, you can tell where they intended to actually slot it in. Like they had to do some video editing to screw around with their original announcement so that they could cut out the Mac Mini from it. And so, you know, it's very obvious that they intended to announce it, and then for whatever reason they didn't or couldn't or chose not to, whatever. Regardless, things happen, and even Apple does not have the power to move mountains all the time.
Yeah, I'm interested in all this stuff. Not planning on upgrading any computers. I did that last year. That was expensive enough.
You say not planning to, but if you accidentally buy a Mac Studio, we shouldn't be surprised.
I mean, yeah. Well, the funny thing is like once you buy in, like it is a lot easier for me to sell a Mac Mini on Swappa than it is my gaming PC.
Yeah.
So like, not at a it wouldn't be completely unreasonable. I wouldn't lose a ton of money on that. I don't need to though. So I don't know. Again, maybe in 6 months I'll get hired at somewhere that needs 3D editing done or something.
I love how it is in your voice. Like there is a part of you that's like, oh no, I totally could find a way to justify this.
I could justify. It would be irresponsible.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. Maybe again, I predict a lot of long-term stuff, and then things I can't control happen to me, so I'm just not gonna say that. Maybe next year I'll be back to all Linux. I don't know. We'll see where the wind takes me. But my only planned upgrade this year is I want that USB-C iPhone. That's it.
Yes.
And not even because like I'm like this iPhone SE is terrible. It's not. I just really don't want Lightning. And like I'm holding like I don't like I'd like to buy some of the like cool iPhone accessories, but I do not want to do that because it's very clear Lightning is not sticking around. So I'm like holding off on literally everything. So I'm not doing that.
I'm with you so much as I sit here holding my Magic Trackpad.
Yeah.
I love this thing. This is the most expensive accessory that I kind of can't live without. I love this thing, but I despise the fact that it charges by lightning. And I truly hope, I know that the odds are kind of low, but I truly hope that once Apple has given up on a lightning iPhone, I'm hoping that they release revisions of the trackpad and keyboard. Yeah, I don't have a lightning keyboard. I've actually got one of the old style, with real, AA batteries inside of it. I've got one of those for the keyboard, but I desperately want them to release a USB-C trackpad, because I will promptly turn around and sell the trackpad that I have and buy a USB-C one. I'm sure I will lose like $40 on that exchange, but it's worth it. Yeah. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who are going to be like, oh no, I want to stock up on the dumb trackpad, because they will.
Yeah. Like I saw a website who shall not be named. I mean, there's been a couple articles like this, but I saw it pop up again recently where people make the argument that we don't actually need Type-C because I already bought all this Lightning stuff. It's like, ooh, sunk cost fallacy, my man. That's not a good argument.
I wouldn't even call that sunk cost fallacy anymore. That's the dumb cost fallacy.
Yeah, that's sort of like, you know what, guys? I don't know about this Blu-ray thing. I already bought like 20 HD DVDs. I think that's fine. You're backing the wrong tech horse, but yeah.
Oh boy.
Again, really don't like Lightning, which sucks because again, I like this phone. Sometimes apps aren't that usable on it because no one's testing on the smallest screen, and I have it on the higher density because the default scaling is like they took a big iPhone and they just shrunk it, and I can't really read anything. But again, I really don't like Lightning. Also, the camera's not that good. It'd be nice to have a good camera again.
Yeah,
I haven't really had like a good camera in a long time because even Samsung was kind of phoning it in on the normal S phones.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't know. I might go crazy and just buy a iPhone Pro. We'll see.
Or you could pick up a Pixel.
I could, but no.
You won't. You're an Apple shill through and through now.
It's true. I'm terrible because they made their products just close enough to be like Android, where I can tolerate them. I had to wait until they let you change browsers.
Yes. So let's see. Anyway, I know that we kind of have spent a lot of time talking about Apple. I'm going to take just a minute. Because I doubt Corbin's going to have anything else to say on this, but I am going to take a minute and say I'm kind of genuinely looking forward to what they announce relating to Swift and any actual developer stuff, because this is still a developer first event. Even if they will spend a lot of time talking about products, they're going to be talking about development stuff. And last year they genuinely did a lot for Swift, or Swift UI in particular. They added functionality that people have been begging for a few years. And while I'm not expecting nearly as big of an update, I have a feeling there's going to be some pretty neat stuff. And I'm just saying, yay. It's good times for that.
I would hope to see them continue to really ramp up their web support, because the recent not really worth talking about for a long time, but there was new like iOS and macOS updates this week. Mostly smaller stuff. There's like a cool accessibility thing on iPhone where it like will try to detect when stuff will flash and not do that. So if you're prone to seizures, I'm sure that's really cool. And there's also some new emoji. But that update had the Safari 16.4, I think, which is like the biggest update Safari's had in a while. They're very rapidly trying to catch up on APIs. Maybe because of the legal stuff they're going through. Maybe not. I don't really care either way. It's just nice. Now I can get push notifications from web apps on iPhone and iPad. That's cool. I would like to see them continue to improve that. New, more. I mean, I know they're still behind on APIs, but honestly, at this point, I'd like to see some more usability improvements. Like with web apps on iPhone, they're still kind of like bookmarks. They're not like installed like Chrome on Android does. That would be nice if they actually did that. But yeah, stuff like that. I would really like them to be less restrictive with submitting Safari extensions, because I still can't really do that unless I pay them $100 a year and also use Xcode on top of that. When every other web browser, I can use literally any text editor I want, doesn't matter, any developer environment. And I think Chrome is the only one you actually have to pay to submit, and it's like $15 once.
Yeah.
I don't think Microsoft has a fee. Mozilla definitely doesn't. So that's I think it'd be cool to like try to port some of my browser extensions to Safari, but I'm not going to do that if I have to. I don't make money from any of them really. So yeah, but I like to see more stuff there, because they're still kind of behind on the web API still. They've got a lot of like the really important stuff, but I've heard from other web dev people that they're still behind on like the CSS stuff a little bit. But yeah, more Safari, please.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I linked to this actually. When did this even happen? This was, I swear, this was 2 days ago. Jen Simmons. Some people may recognize the name, but probably not. Jen Simmons is an Apple evangelist on the web developer experience team for Safari and WebKit. And she's part of the CSS working group. She used to work at Firefox. Anyway, she posted a message on Mastodon a couple days ago. Quote, "It's hard to express just how massive a release Safari 16.4 is for web developers. Last night I was reading replies web developers posted on Twitter back in 2021 when I asked what developers need most from WebKit, and the vast majority of things you asked for have now shipped." Then goes on to ask what the favorites are. And in full snarky form, in a Discord channel, I basically said, yeah, it only took them 2 years to get that stuff out. Yeah. And it's, it's true. Like, they're 2 years behind on a lot of stuff that people are saying they want, and obviously there's a lot left that they still haven't shipped. So, in a way, like, kudos. You're catching up. You're finally... You're not necessarily going to be stuck in the trap that was the Internet Explorer reputation of just holding everybody back. The counterpoint is you're also the only one who is at risk of earning the reputation of being the Internet Explorer of the modern day that's holding everybody back. You probably shouldn't be doing that. So yeah, Apple, like, credit, you're doing a good job in trying to catch up, but you're also doing a terrible job, which is why it's hard to give you too much credit.
Yep. Again, hopefully they keep that up. Hopefully they make web apps a little less friction on their platforms. That'd be cool. So, yeah, I can probably talk about like one more short thing, and then I need to go. Was there anything?
Okay, there were two things that I can think
Sure.
of. There was the Microsoft Ads thing, and then there was also the Steam Windows thing. Both of which, to be fair, are pretty short. We
Yeah.
could, I don't know if you have the time, but I think we could slip both in.
I'm pretty tired already. I'll do one.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I haven't got food or anything. I also need to pick up the box that just got delivered. So, let me find. I forgot to get a link for this. Did you get a link
For the Steam thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
I found it. All right, let me do this and click. Kirby said, "Don't know how people outside of iPhone users can use Safari." I mean, it's close enough to the other browsers. Really, you're missing extensions. There's a lot of extensions missing because of the thing I just said, where the publishing requirements are insane.
Yeah.
And also a lot of websites are doing what they do to Firefox, where they're like, guys, use a different browser. We don't support this browser. And then you change the user age and it turns out the website works fine. They just don't want to test Safari.
Right.
So I haven't tried using Safari full time in a while because of the extension thing. But I mean, every time I use it for like testing stuff, like it's pretty close to Chrome. It's really just the usability, like the weird usability things of some of the features that are weird. And of course, like really only makes sense if you're like do most of your browsing on one platform, because it's like if I use Chrome, I can get all my Chrome data on any other platform. If I just use Safari, then all my steps stuck in Apple land.
Yeah. All that said, I don't want to like defend it or anything per se, but first off, there are instances I still use Safari, rarely, very rarely, but you know, like if I've shut down Chrome and I don't want to reload tabs, like reopen Chrome and have a bunch of tabs reopening and stuff like that, I'll pop open Safari. There are instances where I just kind of want to use something that doesn't have like any tracking history is attached to it, and Safari kind of comes in handy for that. You know, and just in general, like there are instances where Safari's kind of handy, I guess. It's not great, but as long as if you're not too reliant on extensions, Safari is fine. Like there really isn't much about it that's all that different from using any other browser, except for extension availability, and obviously like some iPhone integration. And like you say, if you're not an iPhone user, that iPhone integration kind of falls apart, at which point, yeah, you don't have a lot of arguments to use it. But they're also just genuinely, for regular usage, there's also not a lot of argument against using it. It's only if you really need the new APIs to be supported, that's the only real call for using something else most of the time.
Yeah, and like really most of like the pretty new stuff I can think of, it's at least partially there in Safari. Like the last thing I remember that's like, again, I haven't been like fully keeping up with what Chrome added, so maybe I'm wrong, but the last thing I saw that's like really cool is this new like local file API stuff where like a web app can just open a folder on your computer, which is what Visual Studio Code on the web does, which is really cool. That's really cool. Safari does work with that. So like a lot of like the pretty cutting edge stuff, it is there. Maybe there's like one or two different things with it, but it's mostly just the usability stuff, like notifications on iPhone, stuff like that. But so Steam announced that starting on January 1st of 2024, they will no longer support Windows 7, Windows 8, and 8.1. And they say that the Steam client will no longer run on those versions of Windows. This isn't like a, hey, things might break eventually. This is a, no, you're done. Get out.
Yeah.
And they mentioned that, obviously you should try updating before then, because this is very similar to what Google just did, because I believe it was January of this year is when Microsoft was fully 100% done with security patches on 7. They'd extended it a couple times. Now they're like really done. They're done with that. And also the security updates for Windows 8 and 8.1 ended. They didn't really extend that at all because not a lot of people left using that. Most organizations kind of just jumped straight from 7 to 10. So yeah, I don't like super duper love this. I believe a Steam survey said that like, I think it was like 5% of Steam users were still on Windows 7 or 8. I'm not sure. Actually, I can pull up the Steam I love the Steam hardware survey. That's like one of my favorite things Valve does. But
I have a funny feeling it's mostly 7 and probably almost nobody on 8 or 8.1.
Yeah. But yeah, like Microsoft just ended support. Google Chrome kind of aligned its end of support to that same timeline, whatever the Chrome update was that came out in, I think, February or March. Dropped support for Windows 7 and Windows 8 and 8.1. And because Google dropped that, Microsoft Edge isn't being updated on those versions either. Pretty much all the Chromium browsers stopped. I don't think anyone's trying to like backport Chromium to Windows 7 anymore. Firefox is still supporting 7. So if you're still using that, you can use Firefox and be moderately protected. But yeah, so Valve's just kind of carrying everyone on here, and I don't love that like the games you bought that may have been working this whole time are just gonna stop in a year. That's not great. I understand that like that's just how this works, and there's enough people who have moved on where they can be like, okay, some people will be affected, but like when we drop this, we can keep our security good and that stuff. But it does stink. It has the same energy to it of like, I think 9 to 5 Google covered that the Fitbit update dropped support for some older iOS versions recently. So theoretically, if you've got like an old iPhone you've been really enjoying using your Fitbit watch, you're done now.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Which is unfortunate because it ties back into the whole thing where you have to upgrade for maybe no reason. But honestly, I wonder what effect this will have on like Wine. I don't know if a lot of these wrappers around like Steam for Windows, I don't know if they're pretending to be Windows 7 still. I know they were using XP for a while, but Valve dropped that a long time ago. And I'm trying to load the Steam hardware survey, and it's just not loading at all.
Black screen, right? I mean, like, you've got menus at the top, but totally black screen. Yeah, that's happening to me too.
Just tried Safari. It's also broken.
Yep, that's exactly exactly one of the reasons I try Safari is every once in a while this sort of thing happens to me with Chrome.
Yeah, I'm not toggling all my extensions. This is tried something.
Well, I've tried even toggling extensions, and there's a problem with the Google Play Store where sometimes it will show me just blank white screen or almost nothing. And sometimes I use Safari for that. That's so coincidentally, there's one of the uses for it. Though I know I could use any other browser, but you get the point. But yeah,
okay, so
I wonder if Steam decided to accidentally throw their survey results kind of in the fire in the meantime.
Well, IGN wrote an article about this, and I guess when they wrote it, it was still working because they said, according to the February Steam hardware and software survey, Windows 7 made up 1.52% of Steam users, and Windows 8 was 0.34. So this is a collective total of less than 2% of Steam users affected.
Yeah.
So again, not great. I don't love this aspect of the software industry. Especially because it's like kind of a platform, but it's also like the thing that's required to run these games and all.
Yeah.
So,
and to some extent, this potentially leaves people sort of just languishing with hardware that ceases to be useful to play like old games. It could effectively render a few really old games that aren't, for whatever reason, maybe they're not compatible with newer versions of Windows. This could leave some old games just dead and basically unplayable and unrecoverable.
Yeah.
And just in general, maybe someone even just has a really old computer that that's just what they have to play games on, and killing this client does kind of leave you just with no option. Do they say that the client will fully stop working, entirely?
I mean, they say after that date, the Steam client will no longer run on those versions of Windows.
I wonder if they mean that the ones that, from that point on, they're the ones they distribute won't be able to run on it, or if, the one that's already installed will just suddenly, self-brick.
This sounds to me like the latter. That sounds like they're going to kill it.
I mean, I kind of expect that, but that's also really crappy.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not the case.
Again, also, well, they mention in this that, part of the reason they're doing this is because Steam uses an embedded version of Chrome. And I just said that Chrome, and with Windows 7, so it's already a ticking time bomb in terms of security vulnerabilities. So, all it takes is someone sneaking a bad JavaScript file onto the Steam store, and then you open the Steam store on your Steam app on Windows 7, and your computer has malware.
Yes.
So.
But to be fair, that person is targeting a current 1.86% of the user base. So
yeah,
maybe that's not even really worth the trouble. And you got to expect that number is going to fall pretty rapidly, even for how low it already is. So I'm not sure that's threatening, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like another thing starting to fall apart. So yeah, again, I don't super love this, but if you've got a Windows 7 PC, there's always piracy.
Yes.
For keeping the older games alive. That's the only reason we still have access to basically all of Nintendo's old games.
Mm-hmm.
Just piracy. There's also, I don't know what the status is on GOG on these older versions, but the nice thing about GOG is that you don't need the launcher for most of the games. You can just go to their because I bought a couple games on GOG because at least one of them I already had on Steam, but it crashes when you're running it from inside Parallels, and it was Fallout 3. For whatever reason, Steam Fallout 3 refuses to run in Parallels on my Mac, but the GOG version doesn't have any of the DRM that I guess is the issue. So I bought Fallout 3 on GOG when it was on sale for $3, and I bought a bunch of other games, and you can use the launcher if you want that, but I don't know I don't think it's 100% of them, because some of them need that extra the multiplayer frameworks and stuff in the launcher, but a lot of them you just go to their website and they will just give you an exe file.
Mm-hmm.
And has no restrictions, and you can have that forever, and it's really nice.
Also true with some portion of the Humble Bundle releases and things like that.
Yeah, the ones that don't give you Steam keys.
Yeah. Even a few of those, they give you the Steam key if that's what you want to use, but you can also, in some cases, get just a separate DRM free version.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's obviously not everything's lost, but to be fair, there are also a lot of companies that just either don't exist or they just don't care enough or don't think about re-releasing to GOG or wherever. So yeah, the problem is this still leaves some portion of things just dead. Yeah. It may not be a lot. I don't expect it's too much, but there's going to be some portion of games that basically just kind of vanish from existence because of this. And the counterpoint, what are you going to do? Like, if you're asking a company to just stick around so that you still have access to some ancient game, that's unrealistic in some instances.
Yeah, and again, it stinks, but I mean, this is why there's other solutions to this. Like, Windows has pretty good backwards compatibility most of the time. Valve is dumping a lot of money into Wine. Yeah. Probably run some of these on. Honestly, a lot of this, if there's games that won't run on modern Windows, they might run on Linux through Steam with Proton. I know this is the thing where there's like early Windows games that are like partially 16-bit, and 64-bit Windows does not run anything 16-bit, only does 32 backwards compatibility. So like there are people who have like spun up Wine in the like Windows on Linux subsystem to run old Windows games, and it does work. So maybe something like that would work for those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it when, things that are working don't. But I know people like Windows 7. I'm not gonna like say Windows 10 and 11 are like one-to-one upgrades, really, especially with the bullshit Microsoft keeps pulling. Like on Windows 10 now, they're doing the exact same thing they did when Windows 8 and Windows 10 were new, where you're getting the full screen upgrade prompts, and the only way you can not upgrade is like the very tiny link at the bottom of the screen. Like, I actually laughed when I saw the screenshot that popped up, I think on Reddit, where they had like two buttons in the middle of the screen. Like someone on Windows 10 got the alert to upgrade to Windows 11. It was a full screen thing and had two buttons, and they were like install now and schedule the update. And only at like very bottom corner there was a don't do this. So
yeah,
that's cool. We're still doing the dark patterns shit. That's awesome. So
now some things will unfortunately never ever change.
Yeah, but again, if you want to keep the dream of Windows 7 alive, try Linux.
You can. If you want to keep Windows 7 alive, try Linux.
I mean, really, like, that's the upgrade for a lot of these people. Like, you want more control over your computer, and you don't want to upgrade your hardware. Boy, have I got the operating system for you. And it might run most of your games at this point. So,
I just okay, Jacob.
Yeah. I mean, you can make it work exactly like Windows 7, so Microsoft can't tell you to upgrade. You still get security patches. How cool is that?
Oh God, I just love that. That's the path that it becomes.
Yeah.
You want to keep Windows 7? Try Linux.
Yeah. I mean,
that is almost kind of a bash on Linux. In a roundabout way, I know that's not true, but it almost is equating Linux to Windows 7, which is not.
I think it's equating Linux to Windows 7 in the positive
its ability
ways.
To run Windows 7 software.
And not only that, but it's thing where you have more control over your computer, and if you really don't want anything to ever change, great. Run, install Linux, install, whatever the Ubuntu Mate edition, or whatever, the one that keeps the UI frozen in time in like 2007, and you're golden.
God.
Actually, I do have Ubuntu Mate Edition on a netbook over here. I was curious to see if it would allow this netbook to work at all. The answer is no. those Intel Atom chips, wow, they aged horribly. I actually do have it. Because I was curious. I was like, I have this netbook, and I was like, if I toss a SSD in this and max out the RAM. By the way, maxing out the RAM on this is 1 gigabyte. So I was like, can I do anything with? No, it doesn't work. But I do still like how tiny this is. It's like iPad size, but it has actually a really good keyboard.
Well, the size of 6 iPads stacked on top of each other. Yes.
Yeah, it is a thick boy. Got Ethernet though, so pretty good. NVGA.
Not that it matters all that much, but I just find it really amusing that you held that up in front of your face, and because of the camera blur, it's like, oh shit, we lost your face, so it just kept blurring the laptop.
Yeah.
The beauty of the fake bokeh.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but yeah. So okay. I'm leaving now.
All right. Before this is instantly quick, but you remember that package I can't talk about details on, but remember I said I was waiting for?
Yeah.
Update. It just arrived in Phoenix, Arizona a little bit ago.
Oh,
so not even a path it should have taken.
I think I don't remember you saying you lived in Arizona.
I don't remember living in Arizona either.
It was a blur.
But yeah, so that's happening. And for anyone who's listening, I can't say what it is, but let's just say I have a review unit coming, and it is a very short turnaround time. I really was hoping it would arrive today, and it's apparently not going to arrive until tomorrow. I don't see much chance of it going from Arizona to here. Austin, no. I can't tell you who it's from, but I can confirm it is not from DJI.
It's a netbook. I sent Cody my other netbook.
Yes.
We're gonna
an embargo on a product that's 15 years old. But no, it is not that. So anyway, yeah, I have a very, very short turnaround time on this, so it sucks that it's going to be getting here. I'm assuming tomorrow. If FedEx doesn't get it here tomorrow, I'm going to be like actively calling them saying, you need to pay me for the time I'm losing on you guys. You're ruining my weekend.
No, I didn't even have a Tech Tales for you to record. It's a waste.
Yeah. It's pretty lucky.
I know you're
canceled this weekend.
Yeah, it's like, I know you're really frustrated and short on time, but we need to talk about Internet Explorer for 2 hours again.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you don't mind me taking photos while I talk, I could probably make that work.
I can edit it. We'll get you a lapel mic. It's like nothing ever changed.
It's funny that you say we'll get you one. It's like, dude, do you not know that I actually have like 4 of them lying around?
Don't even need to do that. Just walk around. There's like box noises in the background.
I actually have wireless transmitters and lapel and lavalier mics, like pro level lavalier mics handy. So no, we're good.
We're good. Yeah, you don't even really need to look at anything. You just complain into the mic, and I turn that into content.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. That's pretty much what happens anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. There's just slightly more noises I need to edit out. It's great.
But yeah. Anyway, so goddamn FedEx, effing FedEx,
Terrible.
Always FedEx, and it very notably FedEx still predicts it's going to arrive here before 8 p.m. tonight. So, yay them.
Terrible. I get to go pick up my Xbox headset is delivered now. So I get to go pick that up. I'll report back with how good or awful that is. My friend has one. He says it's pretty good, but yeah, that's like the one thing I had to buy for the Xbox. I didn't know this, but apparently it's really weird how the tables have turned. Where with PlayStation, it will take literally any NVMe storage if it's fast enough, any USB headset, whatever, it's all good. Microsoft, no, we've got proprietary storage and we have a certification program for headsets. I have like 3 USB headsets that are wireless, don't work on the Xbox. It needs extra certification.
I'm convinced that every generation there is a Slayer. No. Anyone who's ever watched Buffy gets that. But no, in every generation, they switch teams.
Yeah.
Like Sony will go from proprietary everything, locked down on everything, to suddenly like, oh no, we'll work with you. Like, if it is technically, compatible enough, we're good with it. Just come on in. And the next generation, holy crap, no, you need to pass all the certifications. We made up new stuff. In fact, if you don't pay us, like, we might just blacklist you anyway. Yeah. And then Microsoft, same story, just alternating.
Yeah. Last generation of Xboxes, they were like, you want to fucking replace the internal drive? Go ahead. We don't care. Now it's like, no touchy the box.
It makes me wonder if this is like, do their support teams maybe run into problem after problem and they're realizing it's really expensive to quote unquote support, or like maybe hardware is causing damage or whatever. And so they were like, okay, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to let it happen again. So the next generation, they're like, yeah, we'll lock it down. And then after customers complain long enough, they're like, damn it, we put up with so many complaints. Let's just try letting people do stuff again. And the cycle continues.
Yeah, Kirby said even my headphone amp DAC works on PS4 and PS5. Yeah, like everything else just takes normal USB standard stuff. Like all this is like fully standardized. I've used not this one, these are Bluetooth headphones, but I have my USB SteelSeries headset that's like little USB little dongle. I've plugged that into this Mac OS 9 Mac and it works. It's like all that stuff standardized. Microsoft just doesn't. What's weird is that they just don't allow like the headsets. Like I'm pretty sure like they don't lock down controllers at all. Like if you can reverse engineer their controller API, they don't care, which is weird, but whatever. It's also weird that they're kind of locking down some of the hardware when like they're pretty open with software. Like Xbox has far better backwards compatibility than Sony's consoles, and also just has like a full Edge browser if you want that for some reason. There you go. It's got apps from the Windows Store, so very weird, but whatever.
Okay, Corbin, you know the reason that they have an Edge browser on there is entirely because they're using this to try to say, oh look, more people using Edge. They want it there for the statistical claim that more people are using Edge. If they can gain a 0.1% market share because of putting it on an Xbox, they will.
Yeah.
But remember, this is the same company that pays people to use Bing.
That's true. But yeah, don't really know what the issue is there, but it's fine. Someone at Microsoft ordered it for me with their employee discount, so I didn't have to pay as much for their stupid headset.
That helps.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going now. Goodbye, everyone.
All right, man. Well, take it easy and chat with you, I don't know, whenever we chat next.
Yeah, whenever. Bye.
Later. All right. So, whatever do we talk about now? Let's see. Quickly catching up on comments. Curvy sharing my frustration with FedEx. Because it's always FedEx, guys. It's always FedEx. Not to say I didn't just happen to have a bad experience with UPS, though I'm not even sure if it was UPS's fault. It seems like it was Amazon's fault. I already took him back in the other room. I ordered olives and black beans. Cans of olives and black beans. Well over half of all those cans. Actually, wait. how many cans were not dented? A total out of 24 cans, 4 of them were not dented at all. 4 out of 24 were not dented. And I would say roughly half of the cans were dented to the point that they would not be considered safe in any way, shape, or form for, you know, usage. The other 8-ish, I'm not sure if it's 8. It might be less than that. Maybe it was 7. I think I remember 7. Those were dented lightly to the point that, you know, probably fine. But yeah, that happened under UPS's control. But to be fair, Amazon packed it with basically no packing pillows, no balloons. So yeah, it seems like that's kind of more Amazon's fault. Anyway, so let's see. Kirby commenting on DJI. The DOJ hates China, so they hate DJI. To be fair, no, it's not because the DOJ hates China. It's because DJI already has, and like, I'm not trash talking here, but there's already a lot of scrutiny on DJI because they have provided drones to the CCP that were used for tracking people down, and not necessarily well-intentioned purposes. Was DJI necessarily at fault for how the drones were used? That's a debate I'm not going to bother having here. But yeah, a lot of people aren't fans of DJI over that. There's also a lot of scary, hand-wavy, hocus-pocus theories that DJI's drones are being used to basically spy on U.S. territory, or rather the territory of, like, everybody. Again, look, I don't know. People can argue that as much as they want. I don't even want to get into it. It seems because a lot of people have also done, like, they've checked the network usage, and there's no sign that level of that any meaningful data is being transmitted. So I'm skeptical, but whatever. That's for other people to argue. Let's see. Austin, OnePlus is seeding out their tablet, but Cody's definitely not the person to send an Android tablet to review. Why? I don't hate Android tablets. Don't get me wrong. I will recommend day and night that if you can afford an iPad, you should probably just get an iPad. But I actually like Android tablets. I don't hate them. As proven by the fact, I still have my Nexus 9 here, not just here, but literally within reach. I don't have to lean to pick this thing up. Don't ask me to turn it on because it's not charged, but I do have it here. Not charged. Hasn't been charged in ages, but I have it here, which I think counts for something. But seriously, I will say, OnePlus, if you would like me to review your tablet, please send one. I would not be opposed. How is the Nexus 9 back not decomposing? That's actually a great question, because it is that type of plastic that just loves to decompose. But no, it actually, it feels fine. Like, it feels kind of like the plastic from when it came fresh out of the box, which is sort of surprising. Especially because I have just recently had, like, I just recycled, not threw away, but recycled a few things that all had plastic that was starting to do that. Anyway, yes, again, OnePlus. If you'd like me to review, send one. Curvy's saying she gave up on OnePlus, one and done with them. Of course, mentioned the headphone amp and DAC working on the PS4 and 5. Got to supply a USB-C brick to power it. Which is funny because 250 ohm headphones only use 0.4 watts. Headphones are okay. Kirby says there's an opening in your green screen, Cody, just to the left of the right hand corner. Let's see. Yeah, I assume you're talking about that. Yeah, I suppose I can turn it this way and kind of get it out of view. Yeah, well, the green screen, the way I have it set up, it does not. I have it stretched pretty tight across the top, but I don't have any way to clip it at the bottom. So, yeah, it doesn't get stretched super far, and it's kind of in a weird position. So, yeah, it's hard for me to get a really good full coverage on it unless I kind of work the camera to a specific angle. Let's see. Austin, your Nexus 9 is sticky and falling apart. Yeah, mine is not doing that. And the screen separating. I'm looking at it now, and no, it's fine. Yeah, I have evidently a nearly perfectly preserved Nexus 9. I mean, the back has some scratches in the plastic, but they're surface level. Definitely just, light scratching, nothing bad. So yeah, it's a weirdly well preserved Nexus 9. Let's see. Curvy, your green screen was $53 from Emart. I don't remember what mine was. I think it was about the same. It's a decent size green screen. I mean, for the fact that I'm sitting, it is a decently sized green screen. If I was trying to do like, the only example that immediately comes to mind is like, oh god, all the Twitch streamers that would do like dance stuff where you got to have a much larger green screen. Like, it's too small to do something like that, but it covers what I need it to cover. Let's see, how far can I go up? Yeah, if it goes up, if I angle up the camera, I get, I've got a decent amount of room to angle it up. But yeah, let's see, how far can I? Okay, just so the chat's out of the way, I'm switching to this view, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, so I can go that far to that direction, and then that far to that direction. So I don't have a lot on the sides. The weird thing is exactly how much or how little room I have, considering it feels like it's a decently wide screen, but the wide angle of the camera kind of makes that an inevitability. Let's switch back to that view as I have that happen. Okay, let's close that notification. Let's see. Curvy, you got the complete setup with a T-stand, green muslin, and clamps. Yeah, believe me, I remember, because we had a few conversations about this. I remember really strongly encouraging you to go with just buying stuff separate and not buying damn it, I am blanking on the name, but you know which company. Elgato. Yeah, I really strongly recommended against getting that Elgato one, because it was, what, like, wasn't it something ridiculous like $200 or something for a green screen? And all it was is basically just a stand with a roll-up green screen. I mean, I kind of get why that would be appealing to some people, but it wasn't that big, it wasn't that good, or it wasn't doing anything special. 160, okay. I mean, still astronomically too expensive. And you can do so much better by just buying a couple of the pieces. Anyway, yeah. So I've got a decent green muslin cloth. It's easy enough to hang up. I've got some. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It doesn't really matter, but I've got a couple of clamps that I just kind of wired into the cloth. And I clipped those to a couple of spots basically at the ceiling level. And down on the bottom, one end of the bottom, I actually, no joke, on this end, I tuck it into a drawer. I open a drawer, tuck the bottom of the cloth in, and close the drawer on it. On that end, it just hangs loose. I don't really have a good way to anchor it. If I did, that would give me a little bit more angle to turn without it popping into view, but I don't care enough. I'm not running a super professional show here. If I were, I would try to turn the whole wall into a green screen and light this whole place better, and do a few more things. Not least of which, I know you guys don't hear it, but I would love to do a little bit of, not soundproofing, but I'd love to put up a couple of sound counts. It would just be a nice little change. But it's not that big of a deal. I know that most people can't really hear anything, even if they're trying. And to be fair, part of that is that's part of why I play music. The music does cover up the little sound that would echo or technically come out. But you know, thanks to the music, that isn't really noticeable. Also, in general, I've tuned things in this room to kind of absorb sound, so there's not too much of an echo problem anyway. The only real problem I have with echo is very literally a monitor that is directly in front of me, a big, large monitor that's directly in front of me. But the thing is, it's so close that the echo is so tight with the timing of my voice, it should be mostly unnoticeable anyway. Let's see. But yeah, anyway. Enough about streaming setup. I'm sure that's super exciting conversation for some people. Anyway, switching to dumb topics. Microsoft has already started placing ads into its AI-based Bing chat. I don't know, I didn't bother reading too much about this, but yeah, apparently they're already shoving ads into this stuff. Presumably, I believe. Let's see. Do they have? Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say. I thought they had an example somewhere here. So, yeah, they're basically trying to present to you like actual recommendations based on your searches, and trying to kind of shove you in those directions. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't blame them, and I think that this was an inevitability. But it is a little bit I don't want to say cringy, but it's so quick. They were like Johnny on the spot getting the ads in there. Now my question becomes this though. I'm not going to go down the whole detail of what happened, but I honestly want to ask this. At what point does Microsoft turn around and say, you know what? Now that we have ads in here, we're going to open this up to everybody? Or, you know, can they justifiably argue that now that they're showing ads, they are covering the cost of running the AI? And, you know, could this be a way for them to basically offer this for free to anyone that wants to use it? And if that's the case, could the same not be said for, let's say, ChatGPT, in particular for those who pay attention? GPT version 4, it charges for usage. You can either pay a subscription, or you can pay based on the number of queries you're going to use. In either case, you have to pay for it. So my question is, at what point do they turn around and say, oh yeah, well, let's start paying you? Or not paying, but let's stop charging everyone for total usage as long as we can show you ads. Let's see. Kirby's saying she uses NVIDIA Broadcast for all that. You need to get sound damping foam to sound treat the office. One of these days, like before you do that, talk to me. I'd have to go looking for it. I'm not sure if I bookmarked it or what, but I've looked into how to do sound treatment for like offices and recording spaces. If you don't mind doing a little bit of DIY, you can do it really, really low cost. You can make it look really nice. Obviously, depending on like how willing you are to like hammer some boards together and maybe, you know, do a little bit of drilling. But yeah, if you're willing to do some of that stuff, honestly, like you can make some really awesome sound panels that are bigger and way better than most of what you can buy out of like most places. There are still more professional ways it can be done, like really high-end proper stuff, but you can achieve near high-end results for the cost of like cheap, or relatively cheap. And there are much more expensive things that are really mediocre solutions for this. So I'm just saying, like, if before you do anything, hit me up. I can point you in directions of things that are better. Or even barring that, you can even get just like sound blankets. And honestly, sound blankets are a good solution in a lot of instances. They're not as good, but they work. Anyway, so the fuzz got worse. What do you mean by fuzz? Oh, are you talking about the green screen? Sorry, I see that. There's a very obvious reason for this. You probably can't really tell, but it's... yeah, that should fix it. It's because the sun is streaming in from the window right up there. And it wasn't there before. It wasn't a problem before. I didn't expect it to be a problem today because literally like 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, whatever, we had hail and stormy weather. It was pouring rain and there were clouds just absolutely caking the sky. Like, there was no chance sun was going to come in here. Now apparently the sun has come out and it is streaming through that window, and when it does, it throws off the lighting in this room. Now most of the time I solve this. Where is it? I don't know. Anyway, I have a reflector that a lot of times what I'll do is put the reflector in the window to just block the light. It works. But that side of the room is also, or that side of my desk is where I take a lot of my photos. And because I have one review unit here right this minute that needs to be shot, and I've got one more that was supposed to be arriving 4 hours ago and did not, and evidently will not be arriving anywhere in time for me to shoot tonight or early tomorrow. Screw you, FedEx. Yeah, because of that, I am, let's see, I'm just double checking to see, out of curiosity, have they, oh, hey, we got alerts. Now we have an alert. Oh, it admits it's going to be delayed. Woohoo! Yay, it finally figured this out. Hours after it should have. I hate this company. Anyway, yeah, because of all that, I have cleaned out most of that space on the desk. I would love to just leave it clean 100% of the time. But I've cleaned out that space so I can start doing review photos. Am I going to be off within the next hour? Honestly, pretty good odds, yes, because I only have the Microsoft topic to kind of finish up on, and then there is the one thing Carson suggested in RambleCast that I haven't really looked through, but I'm going to. So yeah, I'm probably going to be off within an hour. Also, my voice is starting to go. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it didn't hold up very long today. I feel like I sound sick. I'm not sick. I don't think I am. But yeah, just my voice sounds sick today. So yeah, if you're not back, cheers. Thank you for swinging by. Hope you can make it this weekend, or rather, I hope I can make it this weekend for some gaming. I should be able to, but I don't know that I can make promises on that. Anyway, so yeah, I will see you next time, hopefully. So Kirby, take it easy, have a good evening in case you don't make it back before I'm off, and see you shortly, or see you soon, see you next time, whatever the right one would be. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, and I was briefly saying, to fix the sun situation, I can kind of fix it a little bit by turning the exposure down on my webcam. I've got an app for manually controlling it, but that only works to a point. It doesn't work super well, given that the light coming in is kind of blowing out that side of my face. Like, I can turn it down so far, but at a certain point there's just an imbalance where one side of my face, if it gets too bright on one side of my face will just look blindingly bright and overexposed. The other side will look totally in shadow. So hopefully that won't happen in the next few minutes, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, so we already know AI. I'm going straight back into this as if I didn't sidetrack on conversation. We already know that AI costs a lot to run the servers. It's expensive processing. Google has complained about this several times and presumably is going to solve this in some fashion. We'll see. But my hunch is that if ads become the standard strategy, we're going to see a lot of these open up very quickly, even if they're not necessarily good enough. I think that's how AI is going to eventually start pushing forward to combat the cost issues. ChatGPT being subscription first is going to be interesting. and don't get me wrong, part of me is really hoping that they don't start shoving ads in. But as long as they are clearly disclaiming that they're ads, I don't know that I'm angry. As long as there's a disclaimer and you can move past it and basically see like a result that is not part of the ad, then I think I'm okay with it. I suppose we'll see. But I think I'm okay with the idea of ads as long as they're marked. Clearly marked, that is. None of this like super secret thing appears somewhere in random places. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway, yeah, that was actually the last of the thoughts I really had on Microsoft sticking ads into Bing so far. Again, though, I gotta say, in truth, I really thought it was going to take longer. They were like Johnny on the spot with that one. Finally, Austin did suggest this. I did not actually read this article. Oh, God, it's longer than I thought it was. So I'm just going to read the excerpts. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Sorry, Max. I'm not going to read the takes, but rather I'm just going to read his excerpts because I suspect those are probably the key points. So, quoting Hiroshi Lockheimer, our research shows that the typical person uses 3 to 4 messaging apps, whether that's WhatsApp or Snap. That's great. We're not trying to build RCS into one app to rule them all. Austin, it's nothing new. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm sure there's nothing truly new here, but it's the examination of what's said and how it's said that I think is the takeaways. Because you got to figure Hiroshi's not answering anything without having run a lot of this stuff probably through lawyers, or at least like gotten feedback. So you got to figure a lot of this is probably very carefully worded. And what somebody picks to call out, which how did this interview happen? A few weeks ago at NWC 2023, we had the opportunity to sit down with Hiroshi, talk about RCS messaging. While there was not a lot into the future, of what Google is planning with messages and RCS as a protocol, you did get a look at how RCS came to be and how Google sees it. Okay, that's all right. It is an interview. Okay, yeah, this is not going to have much to it, but okay. Anyway. But yeah, so research shows people are using multiple messaging apps. Part of me wonders, and this feels trollish to say, but part of me wonders if Google is like, well, we produce lots of messaging apps. Maybe they'll use multiples of ours. There's no way not to make fun of Google's multiple messaging app issues. But the thing is, I think this bears calling out. What Hiroshi is not mentioning here is frequency. Look, I use multiple apps that have messaging, but I use one app primarily. Sorry, I dropped my bottle cap and don't want that falling away while the bottle is fairly full. But what's the frequency? If people, so I tend to think, and I could be wrong on this, but I tend to expect most people, the vast majority of people, use one app for like probably 80 to 90% of their communication. And then they've got a couple of others, 2, 3, maybe 4 more, where those are like talking to a special friend, like on occasion. They might be for communicating with someone who won't use your primary thing, or they might have one thing for family and then one thing for their friends. But I think there's always a dominant thing. This may sound crazy, because believe me, even I think it kind of sounds crazy. But when it comes to messaging, right now on my phone, I'm just going to list this off. I have what is this one technically called now? Okay, I have the Google Chat app that is basically former Hangouts. I do have Facebook Messenger on here. I have Signal. I have Telegram. I have not launched, and I mean this very seriously, I have not launched any of these in so long that I can honestly say I'm not sure that I've launched them on this phone. Ever. I genuinely don't know that if I launch any of them, that outside of the Google Chat app, I don't know that any of these are even signed in. That's how long it's been since I used any of these. And that even includes Facebook Messenger. If it weren't for having Facebook signed in, actually wait, do I have Facebook signed in on this? I don't know that I do. Okay, it knows my account, but it has a login button, so I don't know that Facebook's actually signed in on this phone. So yeah, I'm just saying I have those. Also in the same folder, because I bundle a few things together, I have Discord, Slack, Gmail, and also I throw Google Meet in here. I don't know why it's in this one. There's just no other good place to put it. Anyway, I use Slack and Discord. Slack for work, Discord for chatting with you, my favorite people on the internet. And that's the thing. Like, the majority of my chatting happens on Discord. And I guess arguably Slack gets in there too. But when it comes to talking with friends in person, like the people I know that live around me kind of thing, or, like old friends, that all happens through Google Messages. It's not common. I don't actually do a lot of messaging with people that like that. But that's it. Like, all of my chatting happens in Discord or Google Messages. I have others installed. I may technically open and use them from time to time, but I mean, it's pretty much all Discord, with Google Messages as kind of like the filler. And just because people might have WhatsApp or Snap or whatever other thing installed, I think the vast majority of people are using just one thing. And you can't tell me that Google isn't sitting there going like, can we be that one? Or even if not the one, can we be like the secondary? Can we claw our way up in usage to be higher than the others? Because that's kind of the one that matters. Yeah, that being said, I think we all know that that's not about to happen. It's a nice goal, but just realistically. Let's see. Of course, Max threw in the key headline. I'm gonna read that, even though I said I was just gonna read Hiroshi's. I want to see what his argument is here. He says messaging is no longer an Android problem; it's an iPhone problem. Messaging is solved for Android users. If you go out and buy a new Android phone right now, the default messaging client will likely be Google Messages with RCS chat. Even on older devices, all it takes is installing an official Google app from the Play Store. This, I think, bears noting that's only half true. It depends on how old the device is, but anything reasonably modern, yes, this is true. Also, it does not apply to anything that is not a Google partner. Again, That is such a vast majority of anything we're going to talk about in the US, so it's not an issue. But I think it does count to acknowledge RCS does not apply in those scenarios. One of the big takeaways I had from talking with Lockheimer was modern messaging and the fundamentals of RCS are solved on Android. Android users globally have access to RCS with each other. It's peer-to-peer encrypted using the Signal protocol, both person-to-person and in group chats, currently in beta, up to 100 people. So this is true. I mean, in the sense of the way this is phrased, you could use the exact same argument for iMessage for anyone using an iPhone. The fundamentals are there and solved. Like, they have this working. It is peer-to-peer. It is, or rather end-to-end encrypted. Sorry, not peer-to-peer. But it is end-to-end encrypted. And they're, they have group chats and all that stuff is working. So, the argument works both directions. The problem with SMS no longer exists for the vast majority of Android users, unless they talk with iPhone users. Which, yes, the very next sentence he has is the same thing, but it's not the issue is now for iPhone users. No, the issue is quite literally both of them. Neither one has a good solution because both of them fall back to SMS. Fundamentally, both of them fall back to SMS. That is the end story right there. You can say, yes, the iPhone is a problem, and it is. But fundamentally, when it comes time for an Android user to talk to an iPhone user, it drops down to SMS. Period. That is still, it doesn't matter which direction you're arguing this from. Both of them ultimately fall back to the same thing because it's the one thing they can safely fall back to. So to say that it's no longer an Android problem, it's now an iPhone problem. Well, to iPhone users, it's not an iPhone problem, it's an Android problem. It's a stretch to make that argument. Anyway, quickly switching over to chat to look at that. Austin saying, yeah, Google appears to be giving up on trying to get carriers to support universal profile. I mean, for the most part, Google's kind of given up on trying to get carriers to support RCS. Like, they support it to the extent that they need carriers to provide some functionality, but Google is providing the functionality for almost every carrier across the planet. And of course, this triggered Assistant to start listening for whatever reason. Luckily, only on one phone. Anyway, let's see. Going on, you said, which is saying something considering that RCS is a standard in the 5G spec and carriers still don't want to run Jive servers. Yeah, that certainly is problematic. All right. So, continuing on this passage, iPhone users have iMessage, Android users have RCS. The only way for there to be native phone number-based cross communications is with an outdated 20-year-old protocol. Images look worse. Strictly speaking, if you even bring up images, you're now talking MMS or whatever. Video looks worse. Group chats become a mess of delayed messages and groups you can never leave. Plain and simple, the experience is the worst. The protocol isn't secure, which is important because one of the most popular forms of two-factor authentication is through a text message. RCS allows businesses to use RCS Universal Profile with the Signal protocol to encrypt these messages. I feel like it's worth noting almost no business is sending RCS messages yet. I know some do, but the vast majority are not sending via RCS. They are sending via SMS. let's see. Just for example, for the first time in forever, I logged into eBay. That was SMS. I'm looking at my phone right now. AT&T sending me... Actually, these aren't even codes. This is just regular texting. AT&T sent a bunch of like, thank you for paying your bill messages. Those are by text message. Let's see. One-time code from AT&T. Yep, that is still text. Let's see. Who else? Okay, I don't even remember who those are, but that's some other company sending me a message. Here's a... oh. Okay. Oh, no, that was a person. That's fine. That's weird. I wonder... Oh, she must be an iPhone user. That's another message from AT&T. God, AT&T uses a lot of message or numbers. Yep, here's another company. Their automated system is SMS. Yeah, all of the codes that I'm checking, every verification code, every two-factor, these are all. Is this? Yeah, as I scroll down a couple more. Oh, hey. Public, the stock trading app or company. Yeah, same story. That's the point. Like, this is not universal yet. You can't claim it is. Anyway, so going on with the reading. This means theoretically customers using two-factor with Android could have more security than iPhone users. This part is true. Technically, businesses can also send iMessage. This is actually a thing. Apple supports it. I'm not saying that they should, but they can. Realistically, this hasn't rolled out yet and likely won't until it's worth the investment, like it would be if iOS supported RCS. Fun fact, it is actually cheaper from what I've heard. It is actually cheaper to send RCS messages as a business. You would have to still invest in doing so, but seeing as this is a pretty direct hook into the Jive servers, it actually costs less because you don't have to have a system that is actually specifically talking to the old SMS stuff, which you have to actually pay and contract with. So in theory, it is actually supposed to be cheaper to do this over RCS, but since there's still going to be people you have to send SMS to, it doesn't work. You have to still keep sending SMS, so no company is going to do this because they don't need to. Anyway, to quote Hiroshi, we're back to a quote from him. Since you mentioned Apple, I'll just mention they talk about how privacy is a human right and how important that is to them. I feel like, quote, look, here's a technology that's available now, end quote. Now I just feel bad for the iPhone users who are going to experience the degraded features. It would be great if they could bring that to them. Hiroshi, I like you, man, but this whole thing about, oh, the poor iPhone users, I don't know that sales pitch works. Anyway, that might work to like Linux heads or something. Anyway, he goes on to say, and better security for them as well. You know, Android users are fine. They're texting each other with total security and all that stuff. And now it's kind of bizarre because now when they interact with iPhones, we're going to have to deal with a degraded security experience. Now that part's true. But yeah, again, iPhone users can say the same thing when they're talking to Android users. Android users say the same thing talking to iPhone users. Like, this is literally the two-way street. Neither one gets to claim the winning hand here. All the problems that are present on one are problems that are present on the other. Anyway, Max goes on to say he's right. There's a lot to the RCS debate and whether Apple should support it. Many tech enthusiasts and those in the industry mention the horrendous experience up until recently as the basis for why they shouldn't. But as I said earlier, that's all history. How it happened does not matter. What matters is how they proceed. How it happened actually does matter. There is a lot of costs associated with this. Now, yes, how they proceed matters way more, but history does not just cease to become relevant because we want to throw it away. But that's not really the point. Nobody is asking for all of Apple's apps on Android. They can keep that. What Google wants, what users want, and what I want is simple. Something better and more secure than SMS. Okay. I've made this so clear so many times. I'm sure anyone still listening is so tired of this speech, and so it won't be a speech. I'm just going to say this as simply as possible. There's one answer to this. Apple just needs to support RCS on their servers for iMessage. That's it. Just create an interface to RCS, talk to RCS, and let those people message back and forth. Maintain the encryption. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard to do. Obviously, it won't be like true end-to-end encryption because it'll basically have to be decrypted at one end of, like, it'll have to be decrypted at Apple servers and then re-encrypted for iMessage. But okay, that's fine. Who cares? Let's be honest. Apple is reading your messages just like Google is reading your messages. It's anyone who claims that it's not happening is probably full of crap. Anyway, this is the solution. There's no other solution here because Apple has pretty much mucked up the system with iMessage. That's not going to change. It's not going away. And this is a reality that is going to have to be faced. That being said, I think there's at least some of this stuff is very optimistic. Obviously, like I was banging on about, businesses are not sending RCS messages. They just aren't. I'm sure some are. There's some narrow group that is, but the vast majority are not. Likewise, some businesses could send two-factor authentication over iMessage. It is supported. It is possible. Just no one's doing it because it's a huge pain in the ass. It's not worth the trouble to set it up, and Apple's not jumping out of its way to make it easier or cheap. I don't know. Maybe they would make it free. I'm not really sure, but it is possible to do this, so they can do it. They just don't want to. I think where we're going to see this go is Google is going to keep lobbying for this. And despite the fact, by the way, I think it bears noting, they mention worldwide. Or I think Hiroshi said something about across the world. Maybe I'm mistaken. It might have been Max's thing about that, but the reality is, like I swear I saw the word world somewhere in there, but maybe not. Anyway, the reality is this is a US problem. It's not that it isn't at all a problem in other places, because two-factor authentication in other countries, for the most part, still gets used for sending two-factor authentication messages. Which it shouldn't. I think most people will agree on that. But RCS is not, it's not being used for two-factor authentication in other places either. So, you know, SMS remains the winning hand when it comes to two-factor authentication. It's not a good one. It shouldn't be that way, but that's just the reality. At some point, maybe the UK, because the EU. The EU might legislate this. If Google petitions and pushes really, really hard, maybe they can convince the EU to take this up and order everyone to support RCS, at which point companies can start sending two-factor authentication messages via RCS, and the world is then suddenly happy and blah, blah, blah. That could happen. It could. And once they've forced Apple to support it in any capacity, it's just an easy, it's an easy thing to basically just start pushing it forward. The only other way that this happens, and I'm going to say it again, it's legislation. At this point, when I first said a few years ago that the only way Apple's going to support RCS is if it choose to support RCS is if iPhone users ever reach a point of saying, oh, it's embarrassing that Apple doesn't have this. We feel like we're missing out. Which obviously only would happen if RCS either got way better than iMessage, probably not going to happen, or if Android user base got large enough for that to matter. Neither of those was likely, but now that iPhones have basically taken over like the majority share, not by a huge amount, but by enough, that ship's not gonna come back to port and sail again. Not for a long time, not easy. So I think the only way that this happens is through legislation. So what Google should be doing is basically going to the lobbyists and saying, we need to make this happen. Get every congressperson you can to push for this, because it's the only way that we can undo Apple's lockdown. It's the only way this changes. And once it changes, okay, then we'll see things like companies sending RCS messages. We might see a return to people saying that they'll take an Android phone over an iPhone, because that, if they reach the point of decent parity or decent communication, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be great, but there are a lot of people who only stick to iMessage because they don't want to be completely kicked out of iOS or iMessage groups. If they can reach the point that it's not a legitimate problem to be part of a iMessage group, a lot of people would feel comfortable switching back to Android. At which point, Google can reclaim some of its access to a customer base. But as it stands right now, that's not what's happening. And honestly, Google, if anything, should be pushing really hard, really, really hard to get lobbyists and Congress to do this, to mandate RCS support. If they do that, maybe this happens. Otherwise, the needle isn't going to move. Apple's holding the winning hand until something changes. It's a monopoly of sorts, except it's not, because their market share is not that huge. But the thing is, it's mostly a US problem. It's going to eventually come down to the US having to legislate it. There's no other way that this changes. In the meantime, the rest of the world is not really using SMS, MMS, iMessage, or RCS. Most of the world just isn't. They're using Signal, they're using Telegram, they're using Snap, they're using Discord. That's just the way of it. And I don't think there needs to be much of an argument or discussion beyond that. Honestly, this is an easy problem to identify and solve. Google just needs to actually solve it. And by solve it, I mean pay unpleasant amounts of money to lobbyists to go make it happen. That, or, you know, lobby directly. Google has the ear of plenty of people in politics. Approach them and try to make this happen. That's the only way this will move anywhere. That's my position. But it's cute that, you know, they're still trying to make the argument. That said, congrats to Max for getting getting an interview with Hiroshi. I believe me, while I got to go to events during the relatively rare occasions that I did, other people always got to be given the interviews, and I was always kept away from that. So yeah, it's nice when you get those opportunities. Let's see. So yeah, that's about it. There's not a whole lot else. Austin's right. There's not really much to this article. In terms of anything new, it's just sort of the same stuff. But hey, you know, that's fair. Let's see. It is 6, so I think this is probably a good time to call it. Let's see. Out of curiosity, I'm just refreshing the FedEx tracking information. I want to see how. I want to see if they figured out yet that they're not going to get this to me today. Nope. It still thinks it's going to make it today. Yeah, they are delusional. God, it's such a terrible company. Google apparently showed off the Pixel tablet to a select few journalists at NWC. Wouldn't there have been more coverage of that? Or, you know, I guess it could have just been like an on background, let's show people but not give people permission to post about it. But yeah, I don't know. That's neat and all. Oh, I just noticed my exposure went to hell again, so popping it back up is something under NDA. Yeah. I don't know that there's a lot to say about that. I mean, good. If they are not allowed to show anything, then it kind of doesn't matter that much, but my hunch is that's probably just like a friendly give us feedback sort of thing. What can we expect people to say? And some journalists get to work with Google in that capacity. I do wonder, like, how much is this going to affect their announcement of the tablet? Maybe we'll get it closer to the 7A. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still wondering if the tablet is going to have like sort of that real reach out and kind of grab people effect, or is it just kind of too late, or is it going to be kind of like we've been talking about on this channel for years, where give us a Nest Hub but with a removable screen? Is it going to sell in that sort of capacity, where, and by capacity I mean number wise, will people be seeing this and go, ooh yeah, I really want that, give me that? Or is it going to sell like an Android tablet? Which is to say, pretty poorly. Ironically, I think if anything, it's probably more likely to sell like an Android tablet because I think a lot of people are going to look at their Nest Hub and go, I already have something. I already have a thing that does this. I'd like it if it was a tablet and detachable, but you know, I feel like it's not going to sell super well. Or rather, I think it was too late. Tablet is probably more important for Android devs than the foldable. I don't know that I can agree with that. It's not that I disagree with it. It's just some part of me thinks that at least with Android tablets, not that a lot of people were doing this, but you could at least reasonably build an Android tablet app and try it on a Chromebook. You could build it and try it on an actual Android tablet. It's not like those stopped being sold. Samsung kept making them. So people have had access to Android tablets that they can build for and test on. I don't know that there's been a true dire need for a Pixel tablet. And not to say that I think it's a bad idea, just there have been other solutions, and I think plenty of people have been successfully building tablet apps, if they care to build tablet apps, using that as a using that. The foldable, I think it's more important that Google release a foldable. Not saying that they should. I'm not out. The irony is, I actually argue Google should release tablets in the form of Nest Hub devices that are tablets. I do argue in favor of that, but I don't think they're important to devs in the same way that a Pixel foldable would be important to devs, where presumably having a Pixel foldable is a developer-ish, well, it's a developer-friendly-ish device. It's a lot of hyphens in that, developer-friendly-ish. But they have a thing that is supposed to be stock adjacent that shouldn't have too many things that are outside of AOSP style function, is what I'm getting at. And I think that matters more to a developer with a foldable. So, and there aren't that many foldable devices out there, and of the ones that are out there, really we're just talking about Samsungs. I know there are others, but right now we're mostly just talking about Samsungs. Arguably, we could have been talking about Motorola. We will be able to talk about OnePlus someday. There are more coming, is the point. So, but realistically, we're just talking about Samsung. So there have been more ways to develop for a tablet than there are a foldable. So I think for a Android dev who's trying to choose a device to build with, if it's just going to be one device, tablet development has had more options. Foldables, not so much. So yeah. So yeah. Yeah, that's my stance. I still think, like I said, my argument there is not to say, like I said, I'm not arguing Google shouldn't be releasing tablets and should be releasing foldable. It's the opposite of that. I think overall, as a product strategy, Google should not be releasing a foldable and should be releasing tablets. They should be releasing a relatively low-cost tablet, probably I even dare say a cheap tablet, And they should be releasing 0 foldables for at least another year or two. But if we're talking about it purely from a developer perspective, it is the other way around in terms of importance. At least I would think from the perspective of what would I consider necessary for me to buy one of these. Seeing as Samsung currently basically owns the foldable market, I would even argue maybe right now, it is still just better to buy a Samsung, one of their folding devices, though, frankly, I would have trouble picking which one, but I really want to say I would get a fold over a flip. But, and I know that there could also be an argument for doing the same thing with the tablets. Like, the only company selling Android tablets successfully is really Samsung. But again, seeing as you can run tablet apps on a Chromebook, there's an argument for maybe Chromebooks warrant that same kind of same consideration. And there are plenty of Chromebooks selling, even if I don't think super highly of Chromebooks for too many functions. I fully acknowledge that they would make a lot of sense in this case. So yeah, I don't know. I don't I just don't see a reason Google should be pushing foldables yet. Though, you know, I will still counter that with one possibility. Maybe they will do something really cool with the Pixel Fold. I don't expect them to, but if they can do something very cool with the Pixel Fold, then cheers. I'd love to see that happen. If for no other reason than Samsung probably, like right now, it's fine that Samsung owns this market, but that can't remain true forever. So at some point, Google should be shipping one. We know other companies are going to be shipping, so it needs to happen. Anyway, so I've sat on that topic for a good little while, in an effort to keep my throat from being completely obliterated. That sounds dirty. Slightly dirtier than I intended it. But in an effort to retain some ability to speak for the next couple of days, I think I should go. Let's see. So for this weekend, again, I'm going to try to game, but I very possibly will take Saturday night off. Sunday night, we'll see what happens. In either case, I can't do that for that. There's a chance that I will be doing photo edits this weekend, but I don't think it's very high. Given the schedule that I have to try to meet, and the very tight turnaround time and everything like that, Sunday night, I will probably be gaming. Saturday night, I think the odds are pretty good I will take it off. And I will be doing work on Saturday night. This is not a certainty. I may stream Saturday. I will announce if I'm going to stream Saturday or not. So anyway, that's been said. The odds are higher of streaming Sunday, but technically no guarantees. Let's just say that. Let's see. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? I don't think there is. So with that, thank you all for coming by. Awesome. Thank you for being here in chat with me. Also, of course, thanks go out to Diablo, Curvy, Carson. Thank you all for coming and joining the chat, being part of the conversation. I love having you guys here. Let's see. As usual, huge thanks to those who support the channel. It really legitimately does help. And to anyone who would like to help support the channel, there are links down below to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. By all means, click on them, do things, make things happen. Or if you don't, okay. I mean, that happens too. Let's see. Rumor has it the channel is just about to tip over the 50 subscriber line. So, you know, right at that number where Twitch would have been paying me. Granted, I was almost at that number when Twitch banned me, but hey, whatever. So with that, hey, maybe next time we talk, there may be another subscriber. It could happen. None of this matters anyway. YouTube doesn't monetize till you hit 1,000, so it's kind of a long way away. Anyway, but with that, I hope you all an excellent rest of your week. I will obviously see you all in Discord. And with that, good night, everybody.